Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of the Irish Breakdown Podcast, brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. Happy Friday. Hope everybody's ready for the weekend, but not until we have a really fun and loaded show coming your way. Topic for today, ladies and gentlemen, is recruiting. And where we're going to start is the commitment of Aiden O'Neal, a defensive end from New Jersey. We're going to break down his commitment that happened earlier this morning. Champ Monds at some point this afternoon during the Pat McAfee show is going to make his decision where he's going to go between Ohio State, Florida State, and obviously Notre Dame. In between that, we're going to be given a kind of an overall state of the union, but how things are going on Notre Dame on the recruiting trail. And then we're going to wrap everything up with a daily mailbag. I guess I could have called it a Friday free-for-all mailbag today, but a daily mailbag dedicated to recruiting. So, Brian, a really fun way to end this week.
Yeah, it's been a kind of a hectic, crazy week, Trev. You know, there's just been a lot of things going on, and this is obviously a big thing today, talking about these one commitment and one potential commitment, and talking a little bit of recruiting. And we had this plan laid out of we're going to do this on Wednesday and this on Thursday and this on Friday, and we got one of those shows in. That was quarterbacks yesterday. So that's the nature of recruiting at a big-time program like Notre Dame. It's going to throw off your schedule a little bit. And you know what? It's the kind of throw off of your schedule that I absolutely love. And I'm all about this kind of thing, Trev. And we'll kick things off with the Aiden O'Neal commitment. And Charlie Partridge is on the board, ladies and gentlemen. Obviously, we've talked about Coach Aaron Henry. He's got a couple commitments so far. Now Charlie Partridge strikes first. He goes to the Northeast and lands a really talented football player from New Jersey.
Yeah, he does, man, and it's good to see this new defensive coaching staff kind of kick off their journey on the recruiting trail in a hot way. And, you know, Aiden O'Neal, he's a 2027 defensive end from Ramsey, New Jersey, goes to Don Bosco Prep. He's 6'5", he's 250 pounds. He's a consensus 4-star recruit. I mean, if there's going to be a way to get you on the board, this is a strong way to start, man. This is a talented football player.
No, it is. And look, we talk a lot about stacking classes. You need to stack classes. You need to stack classes. And one position we've talked about in the past where Notre Dame has not really done a good job of stacking classes is defensive end. Now, you look at the current roster, and you say, boy, it's pretty talented, you know, and you got Boubacar Traore, you got Bryce Young, you've got, the freshman, Rodney Dunham, Ebenezer Tata, you got Keon Keeley, but it hasn't been the same level of just big-time recruiting like we've seen at corner, like we've seen at running back in recent years, like we've seen at tight end, like we see in the offensive line. And that's where they need to change. And up until recently, it hasn't really been the case at quarterback either with any consistency, and we'll see if they can continue that today in the 2027 class. But defensive end is a position where we have not seen Notre Dame really do that type of year after year after year. Can you land big-time players? So being able to go out and get a player like Aiden O'Neal to kick this defensive line class off, a lot of work to be done to finish it, but this is a great foundation, right? Like this is, okay, you got your first one, now let's roll. And this has been a very interesting recruitment, to say the least, Trev. But I think for Charlie Partridge, when you're a new coach, I mean, he got hired in, January? You're now May 1st and you just got your first commitment. I would imagine there's a little bit of like, okay, I need to get on the board here. And now he has. And now it's about, closing some others. But, we'll get to that later. I want to first focus on just the importance of this commitment, Trevor. You talk about a consensus 4-star recruit. He's a young man that is ranked as the number 73 overall player in the country by 247 Sports. I have a feeling he's not going to finish 73rd or higher. Now that he's committed to Notre Dame, but we'll see how that one goes. But this kid comes from a great program. He's a young man that was a team captain as a junior at Don Bosco, which you just don't see a whole lot. Last year as a junior on a really stacked defense, he had 45 tackles, 13 tackles for loss, and I think it was 6.5 sacks, 6 sacks, Trev, is what he had last year for a defense that was really dominant and went 12, and the team that went 12-1 last season. So this is a very strong pickup for the Irish, Trev, to kick things off here on the defensive line class.
No doubt about it, man, and I'm excited to dive into his commitment. Now, you guys know how we do it. We're going to talk backstory, class impact. We're obviously going to dive into some film, and we're going to talk next about what's next at defensive end. So, Brian, you said that this was, an interesting recruitment nonetheless, so I'm interested to hear what the backstory went into getting Aiden O'Neal to commit to the Notre Dame class.
Well, what's very interesting is this is a Charlie Partridge recruit through and through, because Aiden O'Neal didn't get offered by Notre Dame till February. This is after Charlie Partridge had been offered. And what's interesting is, with the exception of Braden Parks and Jackson Vaughn, Marcus Fakatu, outside of those three, most of the defensive line board is in fact guys that really didn't come on the board until Charlie Partridge was hired, which is kind of interesting. And so, this is like I said, a highly ranked kid. He's got a very impressive offer list. You look at the teams that have offered him a scholarship, and you're like, boy, this is a really impressive list. Obviously, Penn State, who's done a great job in the state of Pennsylvania in the past. It's got an Ohio State offer, Georgia offer, Oregon offer, Texas offer, Indiana, Texas A&M, Michigan, Tennessee, Florida State, like very big time offer list. And then Notre Dame waits until February to get on the board. I shouldn't say waits, because that wasn't too long after Charlie Partridge got hired that he offers Aiden O'Neal. So you're immediately playing catch up at the very beginning. And there was already talk that, he's leaning towards, Penn State. I've heard that for a time there was like where Michigan was considered a top school. And so Notre Dame gets on him, and they work to build that relationship up and get into position where they could get him on campus for a visit. So they got him on campus in March. And I believe, Trevor, he came for the junior day. I'm pulling up the visit list at Irish Breakdown now, but I believe he was part of that first weekend, that first junior day and I'm correct. That first weekend where they had like all their a lot of their top defensive linemen on campus. They had KJ Green, Zyron Forstall, Braden Parks was on campus, and of course Aiden O'Neal was on campus. And then, of course, that weekend you also had Jackson Vaughn in the 28 class. At the time he was 28 class, now he's 27. You had Cam McGee, Cam Toomey. So you had a lot of defensive linemen on campus. Well, he was a kid. Aiden O'Neal was a kid that Notre Dame spent a lot of time with that weekend and really showed a lot of love to. And, I would have to think that meant something to him. Like, there's all these like 5-star, highly ranked kids, and they're showing me a lot of love. And that was really an important face-to-face opportunity between him and Charlie Partridge and him and the Notre Dame coaching staff to say, like, okay, do you guys want me? Am I a serious target for you? And it's made very clear to Aiden that weekend that he was. A lot of buzz for Notre Dame coming out of the weekend, people making predictions for Notre Dame, as they do. That's just kind of what predictions do now, right? Like, come out of weekend, let's put a crystal ball in, because we know we can change it after he takes another visit somewhere else. And that's pretty, I don't know what they call them, forecasts or whatever they do at On3. And I was like, okay, yeah, they did well, but like, let's pump the brakes a little bit on this, because there's a lot of work to be done here. And so you're going through the process, Trevor. And I mentioned this to you the other night when we got word that he had committed. On like Monday, I was told by a Notre Dame source that he was leaning towards another school. I'm thinking, well, that's interesting. And then like within 48 hours, it's like he's announcing his commitment date. So I reached out to my source. I assume this isn't going to go well for you guys. It goes, actually, he's going to play for, he's going to commit to Notre Dame. I was like, really? What happened? So he got into that, and it just seemed kind of like an odd situation. But he explained it in his commitment video what happened. So Penn State fans aren't going to like this, but he wasn't going to commit to Penn State. He was on the verge of committing to Kentucky. And it wasn't going to be this week, but that's where it was trending. And that's where Notre Dame thought he was going. And as he said, it was funny is like when you hear the kid relay the story, like that's exactly what my Notre Dame sources told me the other day is, he was leaning towards Kentucky and Notre Dame was like, we really want this kid. So let's get on the phone. You obviously got to make sure that your NIL offer is competitive, but it really came down to Marcus Freeman and Charlie Partridge meeting with this young man and letting him know, like, look, this is the place where you need to be. And whatever was said during that conversation, he did a complete 180 coming out of that conversation. Now he's like, not only is Notre Dame the school he's trending to, but it's done. And it was done by Wednesday. So it was a really interesting recruitment, and I wouldn't say chaotic recruitment because I don't think there was a lot of chaos involved, but maybe a lot of back and forth, like a lot of, okay, where are they? I don't think Notre Dame was the quote-unquote team to beat, really, for him, the way that it was portrayed until the very end. And that's why I always say in recruiting, folks, it's not always about where a kid is trending. It's where a kid ends up. It's like a football game. You could be losing the whole game as long as you got more points at the end. If the first time you led is when you kicked, like what was it? LSU, was it LSU played again? Ole Miss, the Ole Miss LSU game. What was it last year? or maybe 2 years ago, when I think it was LSU won, but they like never led until they made that field goal in overtime. You remember that, Trev? And it's like, hey, that doesn't matter, because all that matters at the end of the game is, do you have more points? Now, you're going to obviously have to make sure that I think that you stay on Aiden and that he's comfortable. But from what I'm told, I think this is where he ultimately wanted to be. I think the big thing is because how late Notre Dame got into the mix, belief for Aiden O'Neal, there was always in the back of his mind, do they really want me? And the fact that Notre Dame is in a good position with a couple other really good defensive ends, and they still were like, hey, man, we want you. And then laying out the vision as to why he matters. Because he's a different type of end than what they have on the roster, and he's a different type of end than what they're recruiting in the 27 class, which we'll talk at the end of this segment. And I think those conversations really helped solidify, hey, man, we want you to be part of this. You're not some guy we're recruiting in hopes that we'll string you along until so-and-so comes. We want you right now. And I think some of those conversations at the end were very important for Aiden to feel like, yes, I want to be at Notre Dame, but does Notre Dame want me? And it was made very clear to him over the last month and a half that, oh, yes, that is absolutely no doubt about it. And that's why he is now in the class.
Love it. Glad that he's in the class. Brian, let's dive into class impact and kind of some of the particulars of this. He is the 11th recruit in the 2027 class. He's a top 150 caliber player on Irish Breakdown's board. Like we said, he's a consensus 4-star recruit amongst all the major outlets, and then obviously on the Irish Breakdown board as well. But one of the biggest things about this is he's the first defensive lineman to be committed in this class. And that's really this team and this coaching staff taking the first steps in stacking what was a very, very talented defensive end class last year. Now, can't just get Aiden O'Neal, something that we're going to be talking about here at the end of this segment, but this is a really solid step in the right direction to where if a player like Aiden O'Neal with his skill set and his just abilities as a power defensive end is the foundation, which let's be real, if we're talking about the number 73 overall player in the country and 247 Sports is your baseline, you're in a really good spot. But this is a really strong way to start off the defensive end class.
So when you talk about class impact, Trev, first and foremost, it's the need, right? What is the need at defensive end? And we talked about at the beginning, this is one position where I don't know that Notre Dame has done a great job of just stacking classes. And you look at the current roster, and man, I love Ebenezer Utade and Rodney Dunham. They're going to be dudes, right? And we're seeing growth this spring from Joe Reif and Dom Hulak. But then you look at the rest of the depth chart, and Boubacar's a senior. So best case scenario, Boubacar's a fifth. Actually, I don't even know if this is best case scenario, but for the depth chart, best case scenario is Boubacar and Bryce Young are both together in 2027 in their final season of eligibility. Keon Keeley will be a fifth-year player. Like your top 3 ends, actually your top 4 ends are all done after 2027 because Logan Thomas so far has played, every season. He didn't take a redshirt season. So Boubacar can't be here past 27. Keon can't be here past 27. Bryce Young can't be here past 27 unless one of those guys has a season-ending injury. Same thing for Logan Thomas. He can't be on the roster past 2027. So then you look at what else is on the roster. Once this current class we're talking about are redshirt freshmen or sophomores. It's Ebenezer Utade, Rodney Dunham, Joe Reif, and Dom Hulak, and not one of those guys has played a meaningful down of college football. So it's more important than ever, not just like, oh, that's what the champions do. That's what you do when you're a gap closer, is you stack classes. Practically speaking, you need a big-time class just to ensure that your depth chart is going to be in a place in 2027 and beyond to where, okay, you're good. You're going to be reloading. And I think that's an important thing, Trev, to be able to do. So just big picture, you needed a great defensive line class in 2027. There's a lot of very talented defensive linemen from pro Notre Dame areas, which made it very important that they have success this year. So like if you don't have success this year, not only did you fail your roster, but you means you struck out in like pro Notre Dame areas. This is a young man from a Catholic school in northern Jersey. You've got 2 top 100 caliber defensive linemen from Chicago in the 27 class. You know what I mean? Like there's now a second 2027 defensive end from the same league as Aiden O'Neal and Jackson Vaughn. Like you can't strike out with these circumstances the way that they are on top of the roster needs. So getting a young man like Aiden O'Neal is that first domino to fall, and it's that great foundation. Here's the other aspect of it, Trev, and I love the comp you made. He gives them a bit of a power player on the edge. And we were talking before, and I think the easy comp for me was just Riley Mills because he kind of looks like Riley Mills in high school. But Trev made a comp of how someone plays in like at Notre Dame, and I think it's a great comp. And it's Josh Burnham. And he's already as big as Josh was in high school, but long arms, power player, doesn't have a wide array of pass rush moves yet, dominant run defender, just kind of a playmaker that's always around the ball, really nice burst and athleticism. Like, man, you're like, dude, that actually makes a lot of sense. Like, I think that could be what Aiden O'Neal could be. And it's like, that's a really good player because we were bummed that Josh Burnham left to go play for Indiana. And I think that makes a lot of sense. But the point here in the class impact is I don't know that you necessarily have that type of player in high numbers on your current roster amongst the younger players. Like Keon Keeley's that way, Bryce Young is that way, but like Rodney Dunn and Ebenezer Tati are a little bit different. They're twitchier, they're pass rushers that obviously can be good in the run. Dom Hulek is not really that big-bodied guy. He can maybe be some of that. Maybe Joe Reeve, but the two other players you're recruiting in 2027, Abraham Cisse and Jackson Vaughn, are not that type of player. So not only does he give you just big picture a really talented end, a top 100 caliber end, my grade for him was top 150. Right now, 4-star, top 150, because I do think there's some things he needs to work on that we'll talk about. But his upside grade is 4.5-star, Trev, which is that of a top 75 national player. He's got that kind of potential and upside, but he's a different type of impact than what you see from those, Abraham Cisse and Jackson Vaughn. And I think that's important because defensive end is like anything else on your football team. You need to have complementary weapons because if all you have is a bunch of twitchy edge rushers, what happens when you play that team that can handle those guys? Or what happens when you play that team that wants to play big boy football all game? And you got a bunch of guys that want to get after the quarterback. Well, that's one of them games where like, this is an Aiden O'Neal game today, baby. And you need to have those. Hey, this is a Joe Reif game. This is those are the type of things you need to have. And Aiden O'Neal brings a lot of that to the table. So I think this also moves the needle for the class in general. You land at a top 100 recruit on 247 Sports. It's going to be a big boost there. He's a top 200 player on 3, so you move the needle there as well. So in any way you spin it, Trevor, or any way I shouldn't say spin it because it doesn't require any spin. Any way you evaluate it, any way you look at it, this is a strong pickup for Notre Dame in the 2027 class.
Absolutely. Bringing Aiden O'Neal in the 2027 class is a needle mover in every sense. Fills a need. It fills a kind of like that ranking need from a 247 Sports or on 3 perspective. I know a lot of people pay attention to that. You graded him out as a top 150, 4-star caliber recruit as well. So Notre Dame's getting a talented player, man. I'm excited to dive into the film like I always am, man. He's a talented kid.
All right, we'll bring the film up now, Trev, and we'll talk through his game and probably work through it a couple times so we can get to all the aspects. But the first thing you're going to notice when you watch Aiden O'Neal's film is he's a big kid. He's listed at 6'5", 250. You're going to see him there kind of playing a 5 technique. He's 6'5", 250, very long. Yeah. Very long arms. Like, you can see it on film, but when you see him in pictures, you see I'll bet you this kid's got 34+ inch arms when it's all said and done. He's really got some length to him, which is so important for defensive linemen. I mean, you heard everybody just losing their minds about Ruben Bain's arm length. Well, there's a practical reason for that. The longer your arms are, the harder it is for guys to get into your body. And when you see Aiden O'Neal and you kind of see, and we're just going to kind of let this film go through, and then we'll kind of restart it as we dive into more specifics, Trev. First thing you see is length and a great frame. And I think there's a lot of like Riley Mills comparisons. I don't know that he's quite as thick as Riley was coming out, where, 300 pounds is going to be no problem. Maybe he grows into a 3 tech. My understanding, and I've had this conversation with Notre Dame 3 or 4 times just to make sure we're on the same page and they haven't changed their opinion, is they view him as an edge player. Now, could he do some things in different situations? Sure, but he's an edge player. And he's an edge player that's whose game is built around power. And that's something that you see from this film, Trev. But I like that. I like the frame to begin with. I love the frame and I love the motor. He plays with a relentless motor, and you see it on the highlights, but you also see it on game film. There's a reason this kid is a junior captain at a place like Don Bosco Prep. He's a try-hard guy with a lot of talent. You know what I mean? Like we talk about the try-hard guys, it's almost like it's an insult because it usually means that they're not super talented. And honestly, it is sometimes kind of not an insult, but like it's an evaluation. Like that guy's winning with with talent. There's a reason Junior Tuihalamaka went undrafted. But there's also a reason why Junior Tuihalamaka was like a very important player for you for years. You know what I mean? And it's the try hard part is for him is that, yeah, he's there, but he's also an athletic, powerful guy. But the motor just runs hot nonstop, Trev.
It was that play that we just went past, by the way, that run on the goal line that made me think of Josh Burnham. This reminds me of the play that he made against Penn State in the Orange Bowl.
Which was almost a huge play, by the way.
Yes, almost to a T. Flat down the line, made the play in the backfield, stopped them for no gain or a loss of 1. But no, I'm with you, man. I love this kid's frame. Very strong at the point of attack. There's been a couple clips, and I know we'll go back through and watch some of these again, where he's really strong, taking on blockers, pulling blockers on counter. He's also a really smart football player. There's been a couple of plays in here where he's going up against zone read, and he keeps his shoulders parallel to the line of scrimmage, doesn't turn inside to the quarterback, doesn't turn outside to the running back. That's a key indicator for the quarterback, whether to give or take. He's also a really smart football player, but I echo everything you said about his motor. No wasted movement with him, always keeps his feet moving, and he is strong. He's a strong kid.
Yeah, and that's something you see too, is you see a lot of punch, like a lot of pop at the point of attack. You see him rock back offensive linemen in the run game. I mean, that's the biggest thing about him is right now, his biggest strength right now is shutting down the run game. He's a dominant run defender right now. And you're going to see that. And again, like I said, we'll work it back, and we're just going to kind of let this run through right now. We're going to work it back and get into some more specific things about his game, Trev. But the first thing is he's a powerful run stopper, disruptive player with a great motor, great frame, great length. There's a lot of tools to work with. And when you're Charlie Partridge and you've kind of made your living taking toolsy players that need some development, man, this is the kind of development player that you take at Notre Dame. Hey, he's a top 100 kid, but he needs work on this, and this. You know what I mean? Like, this is a little different world than recruiting that 3-star kid that was maybe 205 pounds when he was a senior in high school, but he was 6'4" with really long arms, and you thought that, in a few years he might be something for you. I love this play right here.
Yeah.
And that's really what he brings to the table. And a lot of this film is probably familiar to you guys. You're probably thinking, I feel like I've watched this kid before. Nope. You've just seen a lot of kids from these high schools. We're watching film against, Bergen, and there's film of him against St. Joe, and there's film of him against Seton Hall Prep. And, he's going against a lot of the schools that we're used to seeing Notre Dame recruit kids from. And it's been a minute since they've had a kid from Don Bosco, but, they've certainly had success there. Let's dive into this here. Oh, stupid ad from Jeep. So even when you restart it, you got to watch the dumb ad again. But
at least yours isn't a T-Mobile ad.
Oh, my gosh.
No other company wants me to be on T-Mobile more than Bubble.
No. Trev and I will be watching film together, and we're like complaining about the ads, and he's like, he'll be like, man, these T-Mobile ads are annoying. I'm like, yeah, they want me to apparently buy a new Jeep because I've seen that commercial 87,000 times. For a couple things that we'll point out to here is, I think one thing you'll notice, Trevor, is he's I think a very vertically explosive player. I don't know that he's got great lateral speed. You kind of see that here. Like, it's nice. He's a little tight-hipped, but when he's running in a straight direction, he's got some really nice explosiveness. And that's something that I think comps to Josh Burnham as well, is that vertical burst, that power. People use the word speed to power type of thing. He flies off the ball. You see a nice little bend there. I think the issue that I'm going to have with him a little bit is right here is, does he really have that lower body flexibility to be a great bender around the edge where he's dominating the way that Boubacar does? Plays like this, or I say, no, he's not that kind of guy. Like Abraham Cisse's dipping up underneath this tackle and getting there. But That doesn't mean that you can't be a really good pass rusher. I don't remember Reggie White getting low underneath tackles the way that Lawrence Taylor did. It just means your repertoire has to be different than the one I'm teaching Bryce Young or Boubacar Traore. Just like the repertoire that Charlie Partridge is teaching Bryce Young and Keon Keeley is hopefully different than the one he's teaching Ebenezer Utade and Ronnie Dunham to a degree. And so those are things when I look at Aiden, I say, you got to understand who he is as a pass rusher. And that is that he's not going to be that guy that has a bunch of speed rushes around the edge. It is going to be about the speed to power moves. What does that mean to me? Speed to power. It's about being able to come off the line fast and explosive and then use your power to win. And not just for, it can mean different things for other people, but when it comes to Aiden, that's what it means to me. So this is a guy that you're going to want to teach strong, like club moves. This is a guy you're going to want to teach, his counters are going to be moves where he's double moving and throwing a guy out of the way. Club moves. He'll be able to, have maybe some spin moves, but it's going to be the power stuff. It's going to be him taking an offensive tackle and driving him right into the quarterback. That's a move right there he can do. Stuff like this on stunts. Really nice move there. Great closing speed. So there's athleticism there, but it's a different type of athlete than what you see from like Boubacar at Notre Dame or a Rodney Dunham or an Ebenezer Utade. He's a very different player from Ebenezer, but what you can see on this clip as well, Trev, this get off is really impressive. He's not standing straight up. He keeps pretty decent pad level, and you see sort of the get off from him. Now, he's got to work on certain moves at different times, as do all juniors in high school. But this explosiveness off the line, the power to split this double team, and then just the absolute relentless motor to get to the quarterback are things I love about this kid's game.
Yeah, without a doubt. A lot of the moves and the things that Charlie Partridge is going to have to add to his pass rushing tool belt will all be vertically oriented. I'm with you. It's not going to be the flashy things that Ebenezer can do, that Boubacar can do, because he just doesn't have that natural complete bend that those guys do coming around the edge. But with that, he's strong enough to where if he's able to gain leverage on an offensive tackle, he will be able to ride them back out into the quarterback.
Yeah.
That's going to be huge for his game.
Yeah, there's a lot to like about that part, Trev. Somebody in the chat mentioned Khalid Kareem. Like, I can see some Khalid to his game. Like, that's a good one, too. I don't know if he's quite as long and big as Khalid, obviously, right now, but there's some Khalid Kareem to his game. And for anyone that knows me knows I'm a big Khalid Kareem fan. But this right here is his bread and butter, Trev. It's shutting down the run. Look at him hunt this defensive end, meet him in the hole. This isn't even one of his better jobs, but he does a great job of taking on this puller, rocking him inside, and he's now in position of two things. Number one, he wants to force the back inside, but if the back spills, then he's right there with that outside shoulder. He can get off to the ball carrier. So he's closing the run lane by aggressively taking it on. You see a nice job here as well. You see him come off the line, be physical at the point of attack. Look at him take on that double team and then block the struck to get to the running back. But he's really good at recognizing pullers, meeting them in the hole, giving them a shot. And here's the thing about Aiden O'Neal that you like. You're watching him against guys that are going to be playing FBS and FCS football on the offensive line in the future. That's the nature of the league he plays in. He's not going against like, well, I mean, that's a 210-pound right tackle. Let's see what he does when he's got he's going against guys his size or bigger. And you see his ability to move people off the line. Look at that right there. That's him like rocking a lineman back. Eyes upfield. He's a very instinctive player. Getting it. Look, that's why arms are important. Look, watch him lock out this tackle. This is why arm length matters. That guy can't get a body on him. And look how easy it is to get off the block and get to the ball carrier. If that guy's got his hands on you, he might be able to yank you just enough to keep you from getting off to the ball carrier. But when you got 34-plus inch arms and the offensive tackle has 33-plus inch arms, guess what? If you use your technique correctly, you're getting off that block and you're getting to the ball carrier right here. You've got 32-inch arms and the offensive tackle's got 34.5-inch arms. Guess what? He might have you sealed right there. But that's one thing that I really like, Trevor's his block destruction, and he knows he's long and he uses it to his advantage. Yes, he's got things to learn, but I'll say this about his high school team. He's well coached for a high school junior. Like, he's not some kid that's going to show up and you're like, I don't know what a 7-eye is, coach. This is a kid that knows how to play. There's just aspects of his game that he'll have to learn, as is true for all high school juniors. but the foundation is very strong.
Agreed. And you can see it a lot against the run, too. Again, I'll bring back the point of his shoulder staying parallel to the line of scrimmage. He's somebody that Brian mentioned that he's a tight-hipped kid, which means if you're angled in one way or another and you have a running back going out the back door the other way, it's more difficult for him to then open up and turn. And then once he gets vertical, he has good straight line speed.
Yeah.
But if you stay parallel to the line of scrimmage, use your length to lock out that tackle, you can shed either way. And to your point about being very well coached, like this is a smart kid.
Yeah. It's a lot to like here, Trev. Uses his hands very well here. I want to see this more consistently from him.
Yeah.
That, you know what I mean? Like that's the kind of stuff that we're seeing. Yeah, he's not super bendy here, but look how powerful he is. And then once he gets the edge, he leans laterally and gets up to the quarterback. That's a really nice move. One of the better pass rush moves I've seen from him. As that becomes more of a regular occurrence, you're going to see him really thrive here. And look, he gets knocked back a little bit, but he keeps fighting, comes off that block, and makes a play.
Yep, that's that motor.
Yeah, yeah. And again, he's going to continue to get stronger. He's probably 16 years old, 17 years old right now. He's going to get stronger, fill out. But I don't know that he's a guy, Trev, that you're going to, want to have fill out to the point where he's 290 pounds. Like I don't know that. I see a lot of people say, well, if he can't stay at end, he can move to 3 technique. Maybe. I mean, we'll see how his body fills out. I don't know that I'd want to do that right now with him. It's definitely not what I'm planning to do. With Riley Mills, you kind of always knew he was going to end up inside because Riley was just so big and broad-shouldered and thick. You just kind of knew he was going to get to 300 pounds. I don't know that that's true for Aiden O'Neal. And so that's why I'm glad that whenever I talk to Notre Dame, it's very much it's edge, 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 edge in all of our conversations. And I think those are things that that I really like about, what he brings to the table. So there's a lot of tools to work with there. A lot of
Brian, let's kind of tie a bow on this commitment with Aiden O'Neal and talk about what's next at the defensive end position for recruiting.
Yeah. Well, I think right now, Trev, when you look at defensive end recruiting, a big thing is going to be you've got to, hold on a second. Got somebody trying to get with me right now. So big thing is it's what do you do next is going to define this class. This is a great foundational place to start, but it's about what do you do next. And honestly, Trev, right now, the defensive end board is pretty thin. Like they know who they want. And that's going to be how you close is going to define this class, because if you don't close on the players that you want, then you're going to have to kind of go back to the drawing board a little bit. And how's that going to go? When you look at the board, here's just some of the names on the board, and I'm going to go alphabetical. Actually, this isn't alphabetical order necessarily. Actually, that is. So you're looking at Afanya Emadobe, the in-state defensive end from Fort Wayne area. You're talking about KJ Green's not really on the board anymore. You're talking about Santana Harvey from the state of Florida, who I think is a guy that could maybe grow into an interior player. You're talking about Xavier Muhammad, who I think probably projects more as an inside guy for Notre Dame. You're talking about Abraham Cisse. You're talking about Junior Tuilamaka's brother. And then you're talking about Jackson Vaughn. That's the board. And there's no doubt right now as far as who are the top guys on the board. Who do they want to pair and partner with Aiden O'Neal? That's the big question. And that's a no-brainer. With and that is at the top, it's Abraham Cisse and Jackson Vaughn. Like those are the two guys that Notre Dame wants. Like you want to talk about a dream class? That's a dream class. That's 3 top 100 recruits right there. And when you look at obviously Abraham Cisse, he's been the number 1 defensive end on their board really since Charlie Partridge arrived. There was, as we said at the time, there's going to be a reevaluation of the board with the new coaches coming in. Doesn't mean the previous coaches were right or wrong. It just means every different coach is going to kind of have his likes and dislikes and different things like that. And so Charlie Partridge came in, and Notre Dame was not doing great with Abraham Cisse. They just weren't really pursuing him super hard, and Ohio State was, and Penn State was. And when Charlie Partridge came along, that changed. And Notre Dame made very quick work up his offer list or up his favorites list to where now, there's work to be done because he hasn't committed yet. But you're in a great place. Look, I'll just say this. The school that everybody's negatively recruiting against is Notre Dame, not South Carolina or Penn State or anybody else. It's Notre Dame. because they know that's the team to beat. They've done a great job with Abraham. They've done a great job with his family. They've laid out the vision, and now it's just about, with Coach Partridge, can you close this deal? Can you close it? And that's going to be a big thing. And then the other one is a kid who has been on the board for a while, and that is Jackson Vaughn. Obviously, that's someone who Al Washington did get on early. They had him at Irish Invasion last summer. We got a chance to see him in person last summer, and as good as he looks on film, he looks every bit as good of that in person as well. And, he's a different type of kid than Aiden O'Neal. Obviously, 6'4", 220, really twitchy, really athletic, really explosive. Also from the same high school, or the same league, at Bergen Catholic. They're in the same conference, I believe. They're in the same conference. And actually, no, I don't know that they are. But it's that Catholic school area up there. So, but he's from Bergen Catholic, and he recently reclassified to 2027. That changed the board for Notre Dame once Jackson Vaughn officially made that decision, which, again, he'd been talking with Notre Dame about since his junior day visit back in March. That's when we first heard about it. And now it's an official deal. So that right there is the board. That's the must-get. That's the dream class scenario. If you don't get one of those two guys, then you got to say, okay, do we want Afanya Imadobe? Do we want to bring in a guy like Santana Harvey? I actually really like Santana Harvey. I don't know if a lot of people watched him. I don't know that I'd rank him as high as the guys that they got on the board, but he's a very intriguing player. But he's more like Aiden O'Neal. So I'm curious kind of where they stand with him. But that's kind of where you're at, Trevor's. You want to get those two players. Now that you've got Aiden O'Neal on the board, it's let's put all our energy when it comes to defensive end recruiting on those two players. You want to stack classes like the big boys. You want to stack classes like Ohio State used to do at defensive end. You want to stack classes like Georgia used to do or Bama used to do. Then it's get Aiden O'Neal, get Abraham Cisse, get Jackson Vaughn, and then put them in the same depth chart with Rodney Dunham and Ebenezer Tade and say, good luck. That's what you do.
Brian, the theme for today's show here on the Irish Breakdown podcast, brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel, is recruiting. And what we want to do now is we want to kind of talk about like a state of the union almost, like where things stand for Notre Dame on the 2027 recruiting trail. Obviously, they're coming off of having the number one recruiting class in the country, according to On3, in the 2026 cycle. And like we've talked about so far through this spring, they're really starting to look the part. And we still have yet to see Ian Premer and Kari Adams and Javian Osborne, and the list goes on and on. But now the goal is, like any, your shirt says it, to close any gap and to continue being gap closers. You have to start stacking classes. And so we wanted to kind of give a brief overview of where Notre Dame kind of stands right now along the recruiting trail. And it's an interesting discussion.
It is. And look, when you look at this 2027 recruiting class, how are you going to finish is going to tell us a lot about what this class ultimately will be. Right now, this is a class that is going to rank, anywhere from 7 to 10. Right now, I'm actually looking to see where they rank now with this commitment now done, just trying to see where they've moved up in the rankings. They're number 8 at 247 Sports. A lot of teams, there are 11 commitments. One of them is a snapper, so really they're at 10 commitments. And there's teams ahead of them. A&M's got 13. USC has 11. Penn State's got 14. Ohio State has 11. Oregon has 11. Kentucky has 13. And then Notre Dame is there with really 10 skill players, because the way that they do rankings, it's like if you have a snapper or a specialist or kick or something, it almost like it hurts your rankings. You know what I mean? Which is kind of crazy because they don't properly evaluate that. And then you look at On3, and let's look at the industry rankings. They have Notre Dame 9th. Let's see what their own team rankings have Notre Dame at. So that's, like I said, anywhere from 7 to 10. I think they were 7th on the ESPN rankings list. They are 9th on their On3's individual ranking list as well. So, you're sitting there kind of at the bottom of the top 10, and not surprising because, like I said, they've landed some guys that I think are vastly underrated. And I was listening to the guy at 247 explaining, I really like Lathan Wisington. He could end up in our top 247. Top 247? Dude should be in your top 100 today. What are you talking about? He might be in our top 247. Like, all right, make the same mistake with him that you made with Jadarian Price. Go ahead, Chief. But it's like your big dogs are still out there. And that's why how they close is going to determine whether they stay in that kind of 6 to 8 range or they jump into the top 3 range. And that's kind of where we are right now, Trev. And that's what we're going to discuss is, where are things right now? And if they want to have like that top 3 class again, like they did last year, and you could debate, 1, are they 2, are they 3, whatever, but they were top 3 class last year, then it's going to be about how you close. And obviously Aiden O'Neal is a good start to that, obviously, today. And hopefully the kid that if they're able to get Champ Monds today when he decides, that would be a big one as well. But how you close is going to be important. Now, I don't think this class is going to be as big as last year's class. I've said this a lot. We'll see. But that's going to be a very important piece. And we'll kind of go through it and where we are right now. And I think right now you look at this Notre Dame class and it starts off with you're pretty darn good already in the secondary. You've got 4 really good secondary players. You've got 2 top 100 corners, what I think is a top 100 caliber safety. You got John Gay, very underrated player. You're good there. You've got a great running back room. Very underrated. Lathan Wisington not being a top 100 player is vastly underrated right now. And then you've got 2 quality offensive linemen to kick things off with, James Halter and Richie Flanagan. And then, of course, in linebacker, you have Amari Irvin, and you have the number 1 long snapper in the country, which, again, you get penalized for having the best snapper in the country because of the way that they do rankings. But it is what it is. So when you look at the current class, Trev, you like it. I mean, it's a good start. You're stacking classes in the secondary. You're stacking classes at running back. Everywhere else right now, you're in good start, but and ... It's going to be about what comes next. Good start in the offensive line, but this line class is going to be determined by who signs on with the kids you have. Amari Irvin, good football player, 4-star linebacker, but this linebacker class is going to be defined by what you sign on, to get onto it. Receiver, they haven't got on the board yet. Quarterback, they haven't got on the board yet. Kind of. They did, but then they didn't. And so hopefully they're going to be able to get back there. Tight end, you had a big loss of tight end. So there's a lot of work to be done, but they're off to a good start. How do they close these next couple months is going to tell us a whole. It's going to be a wild couple months, Trev. There's no doubt about that.
It's definitely going to keep us on our toes and keep us pretty busy, which I appreciate definitely through the months of May and June as we're waiting for fall camp to kick off. That's for sure. But you talked about the importance of closing with this class. And Brian, let's talk about some of the position groups that they might have already that they're done. You can shift your focus to 2028. Is running back one of those rooms for you? Okay.
When it comes to pure running backs, yes. There's a question in the mailbag today. And so, by the way, we will have a mailbag today, but we're going to just do just recruiting questions today. But one of the questions, Trev, and I'll bring it up here real quick as we kind of address it, because I think now's a good time to just kind of quickly address it since we're talking about it, is there is a young man in the 27 class that is a high school running back, and his name is Brennan Lacey. Very talented football player, very dynamic player. And I'm trying to find out. Oh, here we go. This is from Aiden Benami. It says, what is Brennan Lacey being recruited as? Not a third running back, right? Not really, no. Like, will they maybe give him a shot to play there in certain looks? Yeah, I think so. But he's being more recruited as an athlete, a wide receiver / running back / return man. He's a guy that can do a little bit of everything. He's more of like that football player that Notre Dame looks at. So technically they're done with pure running backs. They are still recruiting Brennan Lacey, but they don't view him the same way they view Lathan Wisington and Isaiah Rogers. I think they view him as like, if I had to guess right now, who does he end up being more like, Jordan Faison or Jadarian Price? I'd say Jordan Faison is kind of what they view him as. Mike Denbrock for the last couple of years has been, I actually think a better example is Bubba Frazier. I mean, Bubba Frazier could line up and play running back for Notre Dame. He did it at times, in high school, but he's not a running back. This kid plays running back in high school, but he carried the ball 50 some times for 500 yards last year. It's not like he's like a 150, 250 carry workhorse. He's a just get the ball in his hands kind of guy. And that's what they're viewing him as. So yes, they're done at running back, Trev. They're done at corner in regard to they've met their needs at corner. There are some corners on the board because there's some positional flexibility with some corners on the board. They're done at corner in as far as meeting their needs. Would they take Tavares Harrington? Absolutely. Would they take Greedy James? Absolutely. So I think that's another aspect of it too, is yes, they're done, but they're not done. You know what I mean? Like, they've met their needs with 2 top 100 players. I have Xavier Hassan graded out as a top 50 caliber player. So does, I think, at least 1 or 2 recruiting services. So Ace Austin's a top 100 player. So, like, they're great there. If they don't get another guy, they've met their needs. But it doesn't mean that they're not going to try to get greedy and get more. And I mean greedy, not as in Greedy James, but yes, they're going to also try to get greedy. But they're like, being greedy is more of, like, pun intended. But that's kind of where they are right now, Trev. So they're kind of done there. Same thing, and you know, they're not quite done in the secondary room, but like, they know what the board is, they know who they want, and now it's, can you close on a guy or two? I think that they're 1 DB away from being completely done in the secondary of meeting needs. I think they're 1 safety away from meeting that need, but they're obviously off to a great start.
Then obviously with Champ Monds' commitment coming up here, like his decision coming up here in the next 15 or so minutes on the Pat McAfee show, if they are able to land a quality player like that in Champ Monds, would they be presumably done at quarterback then as well?
Yeah, I mean, Trev, there's a reason they're offering a bunch of 28 quarterbacks right now. And, you know, because if they get Champ, they're going to be done there. There's no need to go after another quarterback. You got 2 and 26. You get this one now. There's no need to go anywhere else.
Makes sense. Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. Okay. Well, let's talk then the positions that they're not done, or I mean, in the case of like wide receiver, they have yet to get on the board. So what's next at some of those position groups that are pretty wide open?
Look, this is one where the board is actually kind of big right now because they've got to close. There's guys they want. Obviously, Julius Jones Jr. is the number 1 target on the board for Notre Dame right now. That's been that way for a year. They really want him. Jackson Coleman is a guy that the Notre Dame staff has got in on recently, and they're making a very hard push for him. They like Cade Cooper a lot. I think they'd love to get Cade Cooper in the class as well. Osani Gales is a player from IMG that they recently had on campus. They like him. They're still recruiting Matthew Gregory. I'm literally going in alphabetical order after these top guys. They recently had Miles McAfee on campus. They like him. So there's Tay Walden is a kid they've talked to about getting on campus. Trenton Yancey was on campus last month. They like him. So, and then of course there's Quentin Burrell from Chicago. So the board is still pretty big, and the board is big because you don't have anybody yet. And you can't really narrow the board unless you like feel really good about where you stand with a bunch of guys. You don't really narrow the board until you get somebody, you know, and that's kind of where they are at receiver, is once they start getting some of these guys on board, then you'll see some guys fall off. I think they're close over the next few weeks. I wouldn't be shocked if we see a domino or 2 fall over the next couple of weeks, but it hasn't been determined yet. Like, guys haven't set commitment dates, and I'm dropping hints. I just, with where things are, I could see a couple guys pulling a David Fuller run shoe and saying, like, I'm ready to be done, and setting a date. Or an Aiden O'Neal where, like, I'm ready to be done, I'm setting a date, and it's in 2 days. You know, like, I think we are going to start seeing that over, let's be more conservative and say over the next month. We could see that, I think, you know, sometime in May. But we're so close to officials that some of these kids are like, I've made it this far, I want to take my officials. I mean, that's kind of where we are. And if you're Notre Dame, look, be patient and trust your process and close the deal. I mean, you didn't get Caden Finley until after officials last year. You didn't get Braden Robinson until after officials last year. Don't think you got you didn't get Devin Fitzgerald till after officials last year. So no need to panic right now. 3 of their 5 studs they got last year in the receiving corps were guys they got after they took their officials. You don't need 5 guys in this class. Obviously, Dylan Faison was, I think, the first commit in the class of anybody. And then you got Bubba Frazier in April. But the next 3 you didn't get till officials. So trust the process, trust where you are. And you know, if you can close on them early, awesome. If you can't, trust the process, see it out. Don't panic and take some kid that doesn't move the needle because you are afraid you're going to strike out. Trust the process And obviously that begins with Julius Jones Jr. That's the biggest must get in the class. And then you need to get one of, and we've talked about this a couple weeks ago, it's that one of, Cade Cooper. I'd now add Jackson Coleman into that mix. I really like Jackson Coleman. You've got obviously Quentin Burrell. You've got Tay Walden, Trenton Yancey, Matthew Gregory, Osani Gales, like one of those kind of guys, because there's a world in which Notre Dame stops at 2 or at least is okay at 2. So like if they get 2 of 3 guys and the other guy goes somewhere else, they'll still keep their options open for other top players. They're not going to turn somebody down. But I think that you can make a case that 2's the need, the minimum numbers need. And then if you go past 2, it's because we think he's a dude and it can help us. And that's kind of where they are at receiver. So I think they're close to doing something really awesome here. It's now about just sealing the deal.
Let's talk about tight end. Obviously, the news broke yesterday that Jackson Dollar elected to commit to Georgia. And so there's some viable options still remaining on the tight end board. I mean, you and I were talking yesterday. Titus Hawk is a name that's still definitely on the board. He's a priority target for Notre Dame right now. Who else are they kind of looking after at the tight end spot?
Look, Jackson Dollar was a loss. I'm not going to sit here and try to spin that and be like, they didn't like him. They wanted somebody else more. And that would maybe make us all feel better, but that's not the truth. That was their top tight end on the board. And you lose a kid like that to Georgia, that's going to sting. You don't often see Notre Dame and Georgia as the final 2, because I don't know that you have more polar opposite programs as far as just values in the country than Notre Dame and Georgia. But that's a big win for Georgia. And it wasn't just about they gave them a bigger NIL deal. Like I hate that when people are, we just lost them because they paid them more. Sometimes that's true. Sometimes it's like, well, sometimes you get out recruited or they sold the vision better or whatever the case may be. And I think Notre Dame recruited them hard. Just at the end of the day, just the things that Georgia was selling were more attractive to the kid than what Notre Dame was selling. But it's a big loss. So now where do you turn? Well, you had Titus Hawk on campus this a couple weeks ago. I think that went very well. There's, again, still work to be done, but I really like where Notre Dame is in that one. And then the other one is right now is Malik Howard. You've got to really work hard to be able to close on Malik Howard. You really only need 1 tight end in the class. They'd like 2, but there's those until on the board. After that, it's Landon Wolney from Florida, who's a nice player, but he's barely 200 pounds. And I don't know that he's a guy that I view as like, okay, that's the kind of guy you're getting a tight end at Notre Dame to be stacking classes. I think Malik Howard is. We talked about this when we broke him down. Jackson Dollar was the top tight end, but Malik Howard isn't far behind as far as that H type of tight end, that second tight end. And Titus Hawk is a guy this staff has liked for a while. Him and Cooper Terwilliger have been kind of their top 2 Ys in a who wants to come first type of mode for a while. Cooper seemed like the guy they were circling on more, but it really wasn't the case. As I did some digging on this, the reason that they didn't get Titus on campus earlier is he plays baseball, and there's a lot of different things going on with that made it hard for him to get on campus. And even the visit he made was like a quick one-day Sunday visit where it's like he just really wanted to get out to Notre Dame. So they've been on Titus as hard as they have been on Cooper, but obviously Titus, it's just been a lot harder to get him on campus and connect with them that way because of baseball. But they were out to see him in the winter, and so those are the 2 guys that obviously that you wanted. Penn State got their first recruiting victory over Notre Dame in 2 years by getting Cooper Terwilliger. But again, I don't know that Notre Dame was in a we're pushing for him yet mode when he decided to go to Penn State. So Jackson Dollar was definitely a guy that they were pushing for. Titus Hawk is a guy that they like, Malik Howard, and that's the board. And you're seeing them shift a lot of their focus not on expanding the 2027 board, but more so on the 28 board. If we see them start offering a bunch of 27 kids at tight end, it's going to tell us that they don't feel super great about where things are with Malik Howard and Titus Hawk. But right now, I think that's what the focus is on, trying to get at least one of those 2 guys. But from what I've gathered from talking to sources, they'd like to get both.
Let's switch gears a little bit, start talking about the big boys up front in the offensive line. And one thing that Joe Rudolph has done a really good job of since he came to Notre Dame is recruiting top-level offensive linemen. We talk a lot about Notre Dame being the favorites on FanDuel to win the national championship this year, and they're one of those teams across the board on a lot of different sports books. But if they want to be that for years to come, they're going to have to continue to stack classes and be stout in the trenches. So who were kind of some of the premier targets? I know some of the names are very familiar, but who were some of the top targets in the 27 class at offensive line?
Well, there's 4 guys, obviously, Trevor, at the top of the board, and everybody knows. I'll tell you who my favorite is, and I don't want to portray this like this is who Notre Dame's top guy is. This is Brian Driscoll's top guy of the top guy group that Notre Dame has, and that's Albert Simeon. I mean, he's to me an absolute must get for Notre Dame in this class. They've got to get Albert Simeon. He's a guy that he's that when you're Notre Dame and you're O-line and you're doing what you're doing, you've got to be able to get a stud every year, and he's that guy. He can play tackle, he can play guard, he can play center, he can literally do whatever he wants. High academic kid, family is like the perfect kind of family that usually Notre Dame has success with. All the things are there for him. He's that top of the board guy. Like that's the needle mover that you want at that position. And so you start there, then you move to Leighton Von Brandt. He's also a guy that the Notre Dame coaching staff is super high on. Joe Rudolph has been high on him for a while. They pushed when there was a chink in the armor at Penn State, with the whole coaching firing and stuff like that, that Notre Dame immediately swarmed in on there and got in on Leighton Von Brandt because that was a kid they liked early. He just committed so early they didn't have a chance to really build that relationship with him. But as soon as he was kind of back on the market, Joe Rudolph and the Notre Dame coaching staff went hard after Leighton Von Brandt. So he's a guy that they're very high on. And when you're high on a guy like that, you want to get a guy like that. And he's also a top 100 recruit that would be a needle mover from a recruiting class standpoint. So those 2 guys are obviously must-gets. Cameron Wagner's another 4-star, talented 4-star kid that Joe Rudolph has been on for a long time that they'd love to add in the class. He's a guy that if you look at the rankings for him, Notre Dame views him a little differently than the recruiting services. None of them have them in their top 250. I'd be willing to bet you that Joe Rudolph, if he was doing a recruiting ranking of offensive linemen, would have Cameron Wagner a lot higher on the board than maybe some of these recruiting services do. But he's a guy that's high on the board for Notre Dame. Obviously, we've talked about Luke Sarkevic is a player that the staff likes a lot. And then they had Olu Alubabola on campus this weekend as well from St. Peter's Prep in New Jersey. That one's one where there's a lot of work to do there. They got on him late. He did visit. Are they in the game there? Sure, but they're a ways away from being in a position where I'm like, oh yeah, they're a contender. He's supposed to come back for an official visit. If he makes it back for an official visit, then I'll think that they're a contender. But there's been a lot of talk on his side that he may not make it to officials before committing. So right now, I don't feel great about that one, but they're trying, they're battling. And so of that group of 5, you need 2. And I think there's a world in which they would take 3 if the right 3 wanted to come along. They're not going to say no to Albert Simeon, no matter what the numbers are. They're not going to say no to Leighton Von Brandt, no matter what the numbers are. I haven't had this conversation about Cameron Wagner because I just kind of always assumed he would commit earlier. But with how I believe Joe Rudolph feels about him, he's also a guy that I'm not sure that they would pass on if he wanted to come. So 4's the number I think they're targeting right now. You got to get 2 more. You got a great start. I like Richie Flanagan as an offensive lineman, and I love James Halter. So the board's in great shape. You just got to close. That's the key. Got to close.
Let's talk about the defensive side of the ball. Obviously, the first domino to fall on the D-line was Aiden O'Neal, who committed earlier this morning. We gave a preview of what's next to come at defensive end, but what about the rest of the defensive line? Because these are next 2 years very loaded at the D tackle position. How are we looking?
Hey, it comes down to this, Trev. You get Vaughn and Cisse at end. We talked about that earlier. Now you've got to hit a home run at D tackle. And what is a home run at D tackle? You need to get 2 of David Fuller-Runshu, Braden Parks, and Marcus Fakatu. And I'll tell you what, I really like the Xavier Muhammad kid that they offered from Texas that I think projects as an interior guy there. So I think your margin for error got a little bit better there because I really like that kid, Trev, as well. And you got to get 2 of those 4, really. And I'm me, Trev, I want to get the 2 Chicago kids. So you think you've got to clean up in that area. And Braden Parks has been a must get for me for over a year. I mean, going back to Irish Invasion and before that, he's a must get. He's a 6'3", 300-plus pound kid that's just that beefy space eater playmaker that you just need more of on your roster. And then obviously David Fuller-Runshoe is going to commit here on the 15th to Notre Dame, Michigan. What was it? Notre Dame, Miami, Michigan, Texas Tech, and somebody else, Georgia. He'll pick one of those schools. I don't believe he's actually made a decision yet, from what I understand. Notre Dame is obviously charging hard there, but there's 2 weeks to get that one done. You got to get those two kids for me. I think those are absolute must gets.
Last up on the docket.
Gets.
Yeah, absolutely, man.
Let me just say this real quick, Trev. I feel like that's the position that is going to define if this can be a top 3 class or not. How well you close on the D line is ultimately going to be that, because what you've got at the D line is that's where a lot of your like elite players are. I mean, if you look at the on 3 rankings, right? And you can look at 247 and whatever they are, but you look at on 3 and their rankings. I mean, they've got Abraham Cisse as the number 16 overall player in the country. They've got David Fuller-Runshoe. Where was he? We were just looking at this the other day, right? I mean, he is the number 9 player in the country. Albert Simeon's the number 10 player in the country on the offensive. These guys, and Braden Parks is number 187. He's vastly underrated. Like, these are highly ranked players that you've got to be able to go into this class and say, if you want to have an elite class, if you want to have a gap closing class at all, you've got to get that. And I don't care what they say about Jackson Vaughn now, these reclass. That's a top 25, top 35 football player. So this is where a lot of your studs are going to come from. And this is if you can have success over the next month there, that's when your recruiting class shoots way up the rankings list.
Let's tie a bow on this conversation, talk about the linebackers. Brian Jean-Marie walked into a very, very interesting scenario. They obviously already have Amari Irving, but obviously looking to add another linebacker or a couple to this class. Brian, where do they stand as far as linebacker recruiting goes?
Yeah, so linebackers, I don't really know where they stand at linebacker. This is the great mystery. I think they've done a really nice job lately of getting guys like Caden Henderson on campus. You got Noah Glover on campus. You got Joakim Gouda on campus. You've got there's a young man that just recently visited this past week. Let me pull up his name because he's a new guy that just got AJ Randall that they offered, but they're not going to get him. JT Austin is a kid that they recently offered. They had Brayton Feaster on campus recently. So they've had Roman Igwe is a guy that they're making really good progress with. Those are guys on the board, Tate Wallace, but I don't know who they're going to get. And I think Brian Jean-Marie started from much further behind the 8 ball than the other 2 new coaches. That board was a mess when he took over, and they started from scratch at linebacker. So look, you got to have a little bit of patience with Coach Jean-Marie, and as far as let him get to officials. Let's see who he can get on campus for officials. We know that Roman Igwe is going to visit for an official. We know Caden Henderson's going to take an official at Notre Dame. You get one of those 2 guys with Amari Irvin, you're kind of good. And if you can somehow get both of those guys, then, okay, grand slam home run at linebacker. And that would be kind of my ideal finish. But right now, that's the position where there's the most work that's needed to be done for Notre Dame. But they've done a great job. They were completely out with Noah Glover and Trent and Caden Henderson when Brian Jean-Marie was hired. Out. Not in the battle at all. So the fact that those guys, and Roman Igwe was barely on the board. And so now that they're all 3 planning on taking official visits to Notre Dame, that's the win for him early on. So that was the big success for him, was get in the mix for these guys. Now you're in the mix. Now can you close? And that's going to be the case. And then when you look at the secondary, Trev, the one big you've got to get in the secondary in this class is Gavin Williams. Like I've said it a bunch of times, that's the gap closer that's left on the board at safety for Notre Dame. You've got to go get him. And so it's going to be interesting to see kind of how all this goes here over the next couple months, Trev, because we're going to have answers. So all of May, all of June, all of July. In the next 3 months, this class is going to basically be almost done. Think about that. We're sitting here with 11 commitments right now. and it's going to be done within the next 3 months for the most part. It's going to be wild, very wild. And I would imagine in the next 3 months we'll start to see some 28 kids pop as well. But it's a fascinating time. Trev, we've talked a lot about my opinion. I'd like to kind of hear from you a little bit. Let's talk a little bit about that D-line class and just some of your thoughts on those guys. Like, who do you look as, like, if they get this guy, then I'm looking at this class and saying, hey, that's what stacking class is like an elite program looks like.
Yeah, I mean, well, I'll separate it into defensive end and defensive tackle. If they bring in Abraham Cisse, that tells me that this program is taking a step in the right direction to stacking classes. I'm a big fan of Aiden O'Neal, and I'm a big fan of Jackson Vaughn and watching his film, but you need that true difference maker. And down the road, they could be. I talked about how I believe that Aiden O'Neal, good comp for him is Josh Burnham and what he did in 2024. I really, really like Jackson Vaughn, very high ceiling kid. But Abraham Cisse is one of those Ebenezer Utade, Rodney Dunham types that you guys like to call like fresh out the box, and they're ready to go the second they step on campus. That's a big step in the right direction of stacking classes. And then along the interior, man, you said it. It's two of the three of Marcus Fakatu, David Folorunchu, and Braden Parks. You got to get two of those three guys. In a beautiful world, you get all three of them. But, obviously I don't want to call it a pipe dream because anything is possible, but that would be a dream scenario for me. Two of those three guys, because you get into the class impact. We talked about the class impact with Aiden O'Neal and what the potential depth chart could look like for Notre Dame when these kids get on campus. And it's a similar conversation for the defensive tackle room. You look at Jason Onye is going to be done after this year. Elijah Hughes is going to be done after this year. Francis Brew, if he elects to come back for 2027, will be done after 2027. Armel Mukum, he'll be done after 2027, I believe. And so you have a lot of guys, like some of your biggest talents will be. And if Tion Gray is the kind of player we think he's going to be, he's also going to be done after 2027. So there's a long list of guys where you really have to start stacking, because after that, you get into the spot where it's like, okay, you're maybe Sean Sevillano if he takes that fifth-year option, Davian Dixon, Christopher Burgess if he continues to pan out, Tiki Hola, and then Elijah Golden. So, these are two of those three guys really help shore up your defensive tackle room for the future. We talk about a lot. You can go big game hunting in this class, but man, it's about shoring up the future. And that's what stacking class truly means. That's how I feel about the defensive line. So I'm with you completely on the interior. And if I had to pick, not that I'm going to be upset if, one of the two kids isn't from Chicago, but ideally you clean up in your backyard. I think that's where you have to be.
Yeah. I just think Braden Parks is a very underrated player. And I know, I just know that there's maybe some bigger names on the board and all that, but I've said for a while, you've got to get that kid. And number one, you've invested so much time into it. That's another big one. So we're gonna see if they can close on them. But I think we are starting to get close to those guys starting to wrap things up. And that's kind of where we are. So with that, so that's kind of where things stand with recruiting, Trev. So here's where we are for part 2 of today's show. We are going to Champ Monds is right now on the camera. He's talking to Pat McAfee. I don't know how long this is going to take. Let's just kind of quickly set the stage for this, Trev, and then we'll get to it when he makes his decision. So this is an interesting story. Obviously, Notre Dame had a 27 quarterback in this class. That was Teddy Gerard, who was one of 2 players that got offered. Remember that whole ordeal of they evaluated all these guys and they settled on Peyton Houston and Teddy Gerard. And, they liked them both. Teddy was the guy. And so Teddy reclassifies and they decided to go after a 2027 quarterback. Liking Teddy more than all the other 27s was a little bit of a problem. There was a 27 quarterback that I think Notre Dame could have got if they wanted him. That's Peter Bork. But the guy that they first and foremost decided to go after was Champ Monds. Ironically, when they were evaluating 27 quarterbacks, he was not on the board because he was a 28 quarterback. He was the number 2 player in the country. I think it was on 3, had him as number 2 player in the country and the number 1 quarterback early on. And then when he reclassified, obviously they do the whole big drops and all that other kind of stuff. But he's an intriguing player, but this is the first guy they offered. And I have asked 3 different times, 3 different people at Notre Dame, was the order of the offers, did it mean something to you? And they said, absolutely. With Gino, you can kind of read into that a little bit. So he's getting ready to make his announcement, Trev. So we will, we'll just kind of let him do that. And he's going to, thanking God and all those kind of people. It's people around him and all the support staff, which is great. But he's getting ready
I actually think I recognize the guy on his back right.
Yeah.
No,
it's a high school coach. So, yeah. So we'll see. He's about to announce. And Champ Monds has committed to the University of Notre Dame. Folks, it is a done deal. Champ is a Notre Dame commit.
Love it. Absolutely love it. Always a good day when we can cover 2 commitments in the same day here on the Irish Breakdown Podcast, brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel, man. It's always good. And you guys know how we're going to get down. We already previewed a little bit of the backstory. We talked about Champ Monds yesterday, but this is an absolutely massive, massive recruit. We're going to talk class impact. Any excuse to dive into this kid's film again, I am all down for, even though we did it about 24 hours ago.
We got some new film, Trev. Got some new film today that we're going to watch.
Okay, is it the stuff you sent me over before the show started today?
Yep.
Always down to dive into some more film, man. But look, we're talking about 2027 quarterback. He's a recruit from Vero Beach High School in Florida. He's 6'2", 225 pounds. Champ Monds, like you talked about, he reclassified from the 2028 class, which makes him a really strong fit for this one. But Brian, no doubt about it, this is an absolutely huge commitment.
Oh, this is huge. And it's an interesting story, Trev. He's only 16 years old, right? But he's built. I mean, when we saw him at one of the practices he was at, and you're like, this kid is built like a junior in college. I mean, he's a put-together young man, physically put-together young man. And just really impressive talent, really impressive skill. This is a big-time pickup. Like I said, before he reclassified and before his injury, he was ranked as the number 2 overall player in the country and the number 1 quarterback in the country in the 2028 class. And so to be able to get on him the way that they were, beat Ohio State for him, Ohio State wanted him. They have a quarterback in the class, but they still wanted Champ Monds, so I think it's very telling. This is a huge, huge win for Notre Dame. Huge win for Notre Dame. Just a big time win to be able to and what does it say about Champ Monds too, that he committed to Notre Dame despite the fact that Notre Dame has 2 kids committed, 2 4-star kids committed in the class ahead of him. I think that says a ton about him.
No doubt about it. Somebody at the quarterback position at Notre Dame can't be afraid of competition.
Yep.
And Champ Monds is definitely not afraid of the high level. I mean, we just spent over 2.5 hours yesterday breaking down the outlook of Notre Dame's quarterback room, and it's that of a very, very talented unit. And Champ Monds now gets to add his name into that mix, but definitely not afraid of competition. Class impact is going to be absolutely huge. Obviously, he's the 12th overall commitment in this 2027 class. And then with Teddy Girard reclassifying, they kind of needed people like to say like a leader of the recruiting class to help bring everybody together. And I think this is coming at a perfect time. They're looking to close on some 2027 wide receiver recruits. There's yet to be one officially landed on the board. So bringing in a 2027 quarterback is going to be absolutely huge. Not that Teddy Girard told everybody to lose his number once he reclassified to 2026, but it is good to kind of have that figurehead at the top of the class. And Champ Monds is one heck of a guy.
Right. There's no doubt. And look, you want to be able to have a quarterback. You want to be able to keep stacking quarterbacks. And we talked about this the other day, Trev. When you're sitting there, okay, well, they've got their quarterback, 2 quarterbacks, they don't need to keep recruiting anybody. Well, yeah, they kind of do, because what are the odds that Noah Grubbs and Teddy Girard stay at Notre Dame for 4 years each? Like, maybe it happens. I hope it happens. I pray it happens, but it's just not great odds. And so if you're going to bring in a quarterback in the next class, he needs to be one of 2 things. He needs to be a guy that is just a great teammate. We've talked about this scenario before. Great teammate, come in, wonderful kid, no pun intended. Great teammate, going to be okay just running a scout team, being a backup his whole career, but a kid that's got some ability that if somewhere down the road, you never know. Just because you need that arm and you need that depth, which is fine if that's the best you can do, because again, you just got 2, you did get a 2027 quarterback and he just reclassified. The other option is you better bring in a kid that can compete with those kids ahead of them. And at the end of the day, that's the reason Notre Dame didn't make a hard push for Israel Abrams. That's the reason they didn't make a push for Peter Bork. These are guys that they had already evaluated and said, hey, they're not better than Teddy Gerard. That's why we offered Teddy. There was only one other quarterback in 2027 that they really evaluated, that they just thought these are the top two guys, and it was Teddy Gerard and Peyton Houston. That was it. And so I don't know how much reevaluation you need to do with Peter Bork and Israel Abrams and guys like that. So they kind of got back on the board, and there was one kid that was previously on the board that they went after. That was Caden Lapati. And they were close there, but I don't know that Notre Dame was, from what I was told, even at the time, that they were necessarily pushing Camden. They really wanted Camden to take it a little bit slower because they wanted to get Champ on campus. The other kid they recruited was Davin Davidson, who was from Cardinal Mooney in Florida, plays for Jared Clark. He's a different deal because he was kind of a first-year starter in 2025. So he wasn't really on the radar when Teddy was evaluated. And the third player was Champ Monds. Champ had reclassified shortly after it was announced that Teddy was going to reclassify. They were unrelated. It's a coincidence that it happened. Champ didn't reclassify because Teddy, because Teddy did. It's just one of the things that we're seeing a lot more of now. And so he reclassifies, and he was the first guy that they offered when they reevaluated the board. And as I said earlier, I asked around to people at Notre Dame and was told very clearly that with Gino offering, that there was meaning behind the order in which they offered the 27 quarterbacks. I have not been told that about the 28 quarterbacks. I'm simply talking about the second batch of 27 quarterbacks. That's why it was Champ, then a little bit of distance, and then Davin and Caden back-to-back. What was interesting about this one is Caden Lapati's big hang-up with Notre Dame was, you chose Teddy over me already, and now he has a head start on me. And that was ultimately, at the end of the day, what kept Caden from really wanting Notre Dame. With Champ, that excuse doesn't help. You can't negatively recruit against Notre Dame of, hey, they like Teddy more than you, because Champ was not on the board for 27 when they went after Teddy.
Makes a ton of sense. One thing that I'll say, too, before we dive into the film breakdown, which I'm excited to get into, I want to give a tip of my cap to Gino Guidugli. This dude's on an absolute tear right now. He developed C.J. Carr, had a great redshirt freshman season. Obviously, Mike Denbrock had a major hand in that as well. You bring in Noah Grubbs, who is Mr. Florida in the state of football, and then Teddy Gerard also reclassifies to the 2026 class. He comes in, and I believe he was the number 2 quarterback in the 2027 class before he ended up reclassifying. Then you go out and get a guy like Champ Monds. Gino Guidugli is really, really humming right now. And I know there's a lot of attention that goes to the DB recruiting and O-line recruiting, running back recruiting, and I totally get that. But Gino Guidugli is slowly rising in the ranks of really solid recruiters at Notre Dame, and getting a guy and navigating the multiple reclassifications and the quarterback commitments that they've gotten in the last year, I think has been really special. So I just wanted to give that shout out because I think he's been cooking.
Oh, there's no doubt. I mean, you look at since he's arrived, Notre Dame has landed. So he inherited CJ and Kenny. So that was like, well, actually, Kenny was on the board. Yeah, he inherited those two guys. So then he goes out and gets. You look at kind of the current. He gets Deuce Knight, right? You get Deuce, and that all goes down. He recovers very well by getting Blake Hebert. I think that was a very good recovery from losing a guy like Deuce Knight. Then he goes out in the 25 class, and Deuce was 25. So he goes out in the 25 class. CJ was 24. Goes out in the 26 class, gets Noah Grubbs early. Liked Brady Hart, offered some other guys. They end up settling on Noah Grubbs. They not settling on, deciding on Noah Grubbs. So they took Noah. And it was really Noah and Brady, and it was who was going to commit first. And Noah committed first, and they like Noah a lot. Then you go on 26, and you've got the whole process there. And, I mean, there's some critiques of it, and is this going to work? Is it not going to work? And it ended up working. He only offered 2 quarterbacks and said, hey, we're going to take the first one that wants to commit between Peyton Houston and Teddy Gerard. Gets Teddy Gerard. Then he gets him to enroll early. Then you get back on the board in 2027. Like, okay, let's do this again. And you've got Champ Monds, who we'll kind of have. I'll just flat out and say it. I think this is the most talented quarterback to commit to Notre Dame since C.J. Carr. I'll just flat out say it. Like, there's a lot of other good quarterbacks in the roster, but like my evaluation, this is when you compare him at the same age as some of the other quarterbacks, he's more advanced as a freshman and a sophomore than some of these other quarterbacks were as juniors and seniors. I think he's that good. And that's a big time pickup. And you convince that kid to come into this room and compete against this group of players. And the 28 board is no slouches either. So Gino Guidugli, absolutely, Trevor, in my opinion, deserves some respect for the job he's doing. So I really appreciate that shout out that you just gave to him, because he deserves it. Right. And we're still in sort of like he's got to prove some things as a position coach, not because he's done something wrong, but because of like circumstances. He's had his first 2 years, they had a portal guy that was already developed by someone else. CJ had a very nice year, good step, but can you build take him to that next level? I mean, there's all those question marks we have, but from a recruiting standpoint, there's no question that Gino Guidugli has shown that Gino Guidugli plus Notre Dame equals big time quarterback recruiting success. He's absolutely cooking. And to a degree, I do think that Tommy Rees deserves a little bit of credit for getting this ball rolling with CJ and Kenny, but Gino's taking it to a whole nother level and just stacking classes in a way that we haven't seen at Notre Dame in a long time. I mean, this is similar to what we saw. I would actually argue this is even better than what we saw from like 2011 to 2015 when they got Everett Golson in the 2011 class. They got Gunnar Keel in 2012. They got Malik Zaire in 2013. They got Deshaun Kaiser in 14 and Brandon Wimbush in 15. I would argue this is even better than that. And that's the best just string of quarterback recruiting that I had previously seen in my life at Notre Dame, my lifetime in Notre Dame. And I actually think this group grades out even higher when you look at what we saw from the end of Tommy's tenure to now the beginning of Gino's tenure, that overlap. CJ Carr, Kenny Minchie, and I count CJ Carr first because CJ committed first, even though Kenny was older. CJ Carr, Kenny Minchie, Blake Hebert, Noah Grubbs, Teddy Gerard, and now Champ Monds. And as somebody in the chat said, they could have had Bear Bachmeier if they wanted him. I'm actually okay with how it turned out. You take your shot at him, and I don't know that Bear fits the Mike Denbrock offense all that great. But you've done an absolutely phenomenal job recruiting at Notre Dame at quarterback, and that's important. You want to win a championship in college football. It's made a whole lot easier when you've got a talented quarterback.
Let's talk Champ Monds' impact on the 2027 recruiting class here, Brian. And, he's the 12th overall commitment. It's also really cool that we just got done talking about the 11th overall commitment here like about an hour and a half ago. But the offense is one that kind of needed a little bit of a jump start. The defense by the numbers in the 27 class is one that really outnumbered the offense. You have 2 offensive linemen in James Halter and Richie Flanagan, 2 running backs in Lathan Wisington and Isaiah Rogers. Now you have Champ Monds. And the next big domino to fall here in this class are pass catchers, tight ends, wide receivers. Very interested to see what this does for the outlook of the 2027 class.
Yeah, I mean, the class impact with him is a little bit different than it is with a lot of other positions because you're just taking one kid in the class. And I love the comment you made. It's like Teddy Gerard didn't tell the 27 receivers, like, lose my number. You know what I mean? But I do think getting a kid like Champ Monds is a needle mover from how it impacts the rest of the class. Because it can be that thing where, okay, if you're talking to Julius Jones Jr. and you're talking to, Jackson Coleman, you're talking to Cade Cooper, you're talking to Osani Gales, you're talking to Tay Walden, you're talking to Quentin Burrell, you start looking at the 20 to 28 class. And Notre Dame's had some big-time players on campus in the 28 class of wide receiver. We don't talk a lot about 28 recruiting, but they had a young man named Jalen Adai on campus who's a top 15 national player. And by the way, if that name sounds familiar, I believe that is the son of Joseph Adai, which says a lot about the DNA, and number one. And number two, just speaks to how old I feel right now that Joseph Adai has a child old enough to be recruited by Notre Dame. Makes me feel very old. But he's a big-time player. He visited this spring. When you've got Teddy Gerard, who – this isn't meant to take, he's better than Noah Grubbs, but the reality is he was a higher profiled recruit than what Noah Grubbs was. And so you get him on board, that matters. Then you get Champ Monds on board. That's going to be huge for Notre Dame. Huge. as it's like, well, here's one thing you don't have to question is whether or not I'm going to go to Notre Dame and play for a stud at quarterback. Like that's that. Hey, Julius, name me a better quarterback room on your board right now. Oh, well, you know, Oregon's got the #1 quarterback in the country. I'll see your, you know, your Will Mensel and raise you a Teddy Gerard, a Noah Grubbs, and a Champ Monds. You know what I mean? Like that matters when kids are torn between two good schools. That kind of thing matters. You want to talk about who, you know, if you're Albert Simeon, who am I blocking for? Who am I pass blocking for? Who's going to be that guy that I'm going to be protecting? And now you know, right? Like now you know. Now you have your answer. Your answer is Teddy Gerard or Champ Monds or Noah Grubbs, and they're all really talented players. And so I think it's big when you're talking about you need to close out this offensive class because, like you talked about, Trev, like the defensive class, you've already got 4 DBs in the board. You've got a linebacker on the board. You now have a defensive end on the board. You're real close with a couple other D linemen. You know, like you're not far away from this defensive class being done and being elite again. Offensively, you're like, I got a great running back class and strong start on the offensive line. And what do you have after that? Nothing. You know, I mean, it's like, okay, well, now you got a stud quarterback in the class. Now it's like, okay, Julius, Cade, Jackson, Asani, you know, all these other guys. Now let's get this thing cooking. And having a guy like Champ Monds on board can certainly go a long way towards helping you close the deal with some of those kids. So it's a different type of class impact, Trev, that's more broad because you landed like here's the class impact for quarterback. You landed a stud. All right, Trevor, back to you, you know. But it's more of okay, you landed a stud. What could that potentially do for the rest of the class? And, you know, we'll see. Now you've got, like you said, now you've got Teddy, Noah, and Champ as guys that you're pushing for. I think that's a big one, real big one.
Yeah, without a doubt, man. This is an absolutely massive pickup. A wonderful pickup, some might say.
Yes, I love that pun. That's, I mean, talk about like, okay, go by your real name or your nickname, and you're just kind of like, you got a pretty sweet name no matter what. His real name, for those who don't know, is actually Wonderful Monds. It's his name. And then his, I believe, nickname is Champ. So either way, it's kind of a sweet name. But and when you watch him play, you're like, yep, that fits. Like, here's my thing. If you're going to be named Wonderful or Champ, you better be a dog. You know what I mean? Like, you just can't be some okay player. You know what I mean? Like, no, we're going to call you, we're not going to call you Champ. We're going to call you, you know, part-timer. We're going to call you fella. We're going to call you Buddy. That's your nickname, Buddy. Hey, Buddy. That when you got, if you're going to go by Champ or Wonderful, you better be a dog. And he is both of those things. So yeah, big pickup. Big pickup.
Love it. I'm ready to dive into some of this kid's film because it is exceptional.
Yeah, it's decent. No, we got some new film we're going to add to the mix today, Trev, because we obviously we've broken down his previous film before. We're going to dive into some different film that we're going to watch here a little bit, and this is some freshman and sophomore film. One thing you'll see on him is he's got an absolute cannon for an arm, Trevor. There are multiple. Let's just show how long this first clip is. So he throws this one. His foot is on the 25-yard line. This receiver catches it at the 16-yard line. Like, okay, 25 yards plus 34 yards. That's 59 yards, Trev, and that's not the longest throw I've seen him make. So he can throw the ball over the top of the defense, and that's what this new film that we're going to be looking at is going to show you guys a little bit is he can throw the ball over the top of the defense as good as anybody in the country. What you're also going to see more of this film is more of this stuff. There's more of this him moving around stuff on this film. This is him scrambling around and launching a ball from the 45-yard line into the end zone 5 yards deep. And he's running to his left. Anyone that's played quarterback knows you can't get as much juice. When you're going to your left and you throw, you don't have any torque. You're actually fighting against your torque. When you're throwing on to your strong side and you're rolling, you've got momentum going towards your throwing motion so you can throw a little bit further. It is a whole lot harder to roll to your left and get that ball down the field. He throws this, Trevor, almost 50 yards in the air, running to his left. That is an absolute rocket shot by Champ Monds. And, you know, but here's the thing. He's not just a big, strong-armed kid. Watch him dip his back shoulder. See on this throw, dips his back shoulder. You can see the arm speed change a little bit because it's faster. It's more compact because what is he trying to do? He's trying to get it over top. and put some touch on it. And that's what he does. His feel for changing arm speed and arm angles is really impressive. And then here you see him as a runner. He can scoot.
Ooh.
There's more of this in this film too, Trev, where you're seeing his legs being used more than what we saw before. This is an absolute – I think this is the one he throws over 60 yards. So he throws the ball. His foot is on, let's just say, conservatively, the opposite 47-yard line. So it's 53 yards to the end zone, and that's where the guy catches it. That's a 60-yard bomb. So you talk about strong arm. That kid's got a strong arm.
Yeah.
I think this is from his sophomore year of high school. That's an absolute cannon for an arm. But this is the thing, Travis. Like, okay, Jamarcus Russell could throw the ball 80 yards. Well, first of all, Jamarcus Russell's a pretty good college quarterback. But number two, the thing that I love about Champ is that's just one of the things that he brings to the table. There's stuff like this. Gets outside, this is a lot like this, if you're a Notre Dame fan, what are you getting flashbacks of right here? I'm getting flashbacks of Samardzija, Brady Quinn hitting Jeff Samardzija on the run. He can feather the ball, Trev. He doesn't always just throw with power. This throw right here, he's got to muscle up a little bit in between two guys, but he can throw with touch when he needs to. He can fit the ball when he needs to. Like this ball right here, this is a combination of zip plus touch. He leads the guy. Look at this. He's fading back. He's got pressure in his face. Just absolute rope. Accuracy, ball placement is special. This is a touch pass. Look at this. He's got to get that ball. This is an absolute dime. This isn't about arm strength. There's a lot of quarterbacks can throw the ball from 37 into the end zone. But it's the touch. The getting that ball out over top where either your guy catches it for a touchdown or nobody catches it. And those are the things that Champ brings it to. This is another touch pass that he's got to get over top and hit the guy in stride. Arm strength is not at all a question mark for Champ. But the other thing that you love about his game, Trevor, is he can make different types of throws. He can make accurate throws. He can make touch throws. And then here he can put his legs down and carry 5 defenders for extra yards. There's a lot of talent here, man. And as somebody, Fight Mike just said, it's effortless. We've talked about that. He's a very natural thrower of football. And that's big for me. That's one thing, reason I love Neiman Lawrence in the 2028 class. It's a natural thrower. Here's some more athleticism. This is him keeping a read zone. And this is where that 6'3", 225 comes into play, Trev, is he's a horse to bring down. An absolute horse to bring down. Whether it's just a scrambler or this. Like, this is a beautiful touch throw right here. Just an absolutely beautiful touch throw. So, no, this isn't about power. This is touch. This is accuracy. This is reading a defense. And there are very few 27, 28 quarterbacks that you will see process through reads the way that Champ does in high school. It's really impressive.
Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, he has all the intangibles that you want to see from a quarterback from a processing standpoint. The other thing that I like that he does, we've seen it a couple times on film already. I'll bring it up again when we see it next on film. Yesterday, we talked about how we want to see C.J. Carr do a better job of manipulating the pocket when he's back, knowing when to tuck it and run, knowing when to step up, knowing when to get rid of the football. This is something that Champ Monds is already currently doing as a sophomore in high school.
Yep.
He has a very good feel for that. Very good feel.
Yeah, and when you combine that, the football IQ, he understands. Like, look at the timing on this. This is so just so people understand, I think most of y'all know this, but hashes in college are narrower than high school, and then the NFL is narrower than college, which means a far hash throw in high school. So the hashes are wider because it makes it easier to throw into the boundary, and I mean, there's a lot of different things that they do it, and it's just different. But it makes it a lot harder to throw an outcut to the far side of the field. It's a further throw. Watch this. This is a 15-yard outcut that he just ropes to the outside. Like, that's a really impressive throw. And look at him. He's reading right. It's not there. Okay, good read. It's not there, right? Like, he's trying to throw a bubble. They've got it. So he comes backside, finds the backside slant, and not only does he find it, but when you're a quarterback, you're seeing this coverage. Where's the ball got to go? There's only one place it can go. Near hip in the gut. That's it. And that's exactly where he throws the ball. If it's out in front, it's broken up. Flat out. This guy's all over this receiver. You put that sucker right in the chest, near your back hip, and that's where that ball goes. He's an impressive player. Really impressive player. Look, and then here's this. You lead this ball. it's chance it gets picked off. So he puts it in the window. This is a cover 2 hole throw we talk about. Puts it in that window with some little bit of touch on the back shoulder. Perfect throw. Perfect throw. Like this is a lot of talent. He does things, Trev. You remember how much I just was going nuts when we were watching Peyton Houston's film?
Yeah.
Like this is the most like, oh, I'm having so much fun right now since Peyton Houston's film. You guys remember how much I loved Peyton Houston, except Peyton's 5'10 and Champ's 6'2", 225. Some people listen to 6'3", 230. But like it's just the type he can make any type of throw. He's got power. He can move around the pocket. He's smart. He can manipulate. He can read. All those different things. I love how light he stays on his feet. So when he gets to the top of his drop, folks, watch this. What do I always say, Trev? Your feet have to take you through your read. Because if your head's taking you through, so here's what I mean by this. When you're going through your read, so I'm reading right and I'm reading the flat defender. So I'm here, and I'm running this route and it's covered. So I come back here and then I'm coming back here to the backside dig. If my head is leading my body through the read, then when I see that dig, my body's not ready to throw. I now have to open my hips, step to the target, and now throw, but I've given away where I'm going. What I've always said is your feet have to lead you through. So your head is kind of the last thing to come, because then when you see the target come open, now you're immediately ready to throw. And that's something that you see with Champ. Look at this. Watch this. His feet and head are basically working together. So as soon as he sees that route come open deep, he's in throwing position. This is, I think, freshman film. You see what I'm saying? Like that is advanced. So you can talk about the body size, the things that God has blessed him with as far as size and arm strength. That's all fine and dandy. But I've seen, Trev, I had a left guard in high school, a kid named Travis Williams at Kempsville High School, that could literally throw a football 75 yards. He was 5'10", 250 pounds. He ain't a quarterback. It's the other things that determine how good you're going to be. Like, look at this throw. They're trying to run an out and up. Defense is all over it. So what does he do? Look at his feet. Look at his feet. Is just constantly on the move, takes him back through his progressions. Nothing's there, and he takes off. Somebody asked about the type of competition he plays against. Very good competition. He's in the same division that Noah Grubbs is in. Matter of fact, Noah Grubbs' team beat Champ's team in the state championship game. So he's playing against dudes. These are other Division I football players he's going against. And then, of course, you see that mobility, that running ability that just adds that extra dimension. You don't see this a whole lot from him on film.
Okay, well, either that was just me or Brian cut out.
Yeah, I don't know how
there he is,
Trev. So like go back, and it just sent me out of the thing. So I must not have been in there, but so we'll go back to this throw over here, but you don't see him like this pass right here, right? We saw this run. We don't see a lot of this, but I really like this run, right? He can do it if you need him to, and he's built more. He already weighs more than CJ Carr weighs right now. Yeah. He's built more for some of those quarterback draws, those QB powers that Mike Denbrock likes to run. Here's another throw. The timing on this. Look at this. This is really good timing on this throw. Guy makes his out cut, and he hits him in stride. You could maybe say, give me a split second faster. Love this cover 2-hole throw. This is really good stuff, Trev. Really, just perfect. This is what I talk about ball placement.
Yep.
Okay, if he leads this guy, what happens? It's a pick or a guy's getting lit up. You've got to throw that ball behind. That's what we talk about. Accuracy is not just about completion percentage. It's about understanding where to put the football. And this kid is really good at that. Look at him always. You know what I mean, Trevor? Like that's a bad habit that a lot of young quarterbacks you have to break. Is when they're really heavy footed in the pocket. Champ is definitely not that way. It's very light on his feet. It's another far hash throw. It's just a really nice throw, and he's just flicking it like it's nothing.
It's like we talked about yesterday with some of the 28 kids. It's effortless. But I'm with you with where his footwork is at, man. That's one thing that's very, very impressive.
Yeah. This is one of those ones. This is an RPO. You're either throwing screen or you're running the draw. Notre Dame does that with CJ Carr. Not this same exact play, but same concept. And that's something that I think that Champ can bring to the table. And he's built for it. He's built for that too. So he's a talented player, Trev. Very talented player. Look at that. Look at him, the guys, poor kids try to tackle him.
Those are juniors in high school trying to tackle someone that's 6'3", 230.
Yeah. Yeah. That's an impressive kid right there. So you guys are seeing the film. There's a lot to like here with Champ Monds. A whole lot to like. Very impressive quarterback. I mean, you guys in the chat let us know, like, what are your thoughts? I think this is a big-time player. And what you're seeing in this video more than what we saw in the other video, Trev, you're now seeing what we were talking about yesterday is like there is film of him being a more effective runner than what we showed yesterday or the other day. This kind of film, you see him being able to use his athleticism and his size as a runner, but you also understand that he's doing that as a passer. This is another example, Trev. They're trying to throw the rail route. Look at that. Look at his eyes. He wants the wheel route, but he sees the cornerback. Where you see high school kids get screwed here is he sees the flat defender, the defensive end, right, is up. He's beat. But you throw it, and then you don't see that corner sitting back. That corner's sitting back. And you can see Champ's eyes. Look at his feet, right? So his feet have already taken him to the throwing zone, and now his eyes follow, and then boom, I go to my secondary read and zip that sucker in there for a big play. Like, he's not only physically gifted, he's clearly been coached well as a quarterback. There's no doubt about that. Like, the physical talent, the 65-yard throw, that's God-given. That last play, that's not God-given. That's built. That's coached. Now, there's a level of feel for the game that's God-given, but, like, he's clearly been coached on how to play the game of football and coached well. He's a really good player.
Yeah, without a doubt, man. Without a doubt. I mean, I don't want to short this kid. It's just, I mean, we talked about him yesterday. I mean, this commitment it's exciting.
Ooh, look at that run. Yeah. Yeah. This is why I say a kid like this, I mean, if you're a high school receiver, how do you not want to play with a kid like this?
Right.
You know, I mean, that's how it was when CJ Carr was coming out. It's like the reason Notre Dame had success recruiting receivers during his tenure is like kids wanted to play with him. And I think that Champ, you know, Teddy and Champ have that kind of ability as well. He's a big-time talent. And look, people aren't going to give up on him. They're going to keep trying to go after him. You've got to make sure that you stay on him, and the vision is made very clear for him on what, you know, what he can be and who he is, and understand what the opportunities are for him as a quarterback at the next level. So a lot of gifts here, Trev. Let's wrap up the film breakdown. Obviously, you've got the body is the size, the frame is there. Depending on how tall he is he 6'2", is he 6'3"? Don't know, don't care. It's all, I mean, there's not a whole lot of difference there. Is he 220, 230? Don't know, don't care. The reality is he's a very thick, well-built kid. He's got a strong, sturdy base. You know, so you see the physical tools, you see the power, the willingness to put his shoulder down. Look, why does he wait a minute, hold on, man. I don't want my quarterback doing that. Yeah, you do, because look where the first down marker is. He knows where it is. He's got to put his shoulder down and get that first down. You know, you talk about he's a young man that's fundamentally sound. He's well-schooled. He's not some big raw kid that just God gave a bunch of skills and now you got to teach him how to play quarterback. You know, hey, you know, let's go find the secondary target. What's a secondary target, coach? You know, like, he's not that. Your primary's covered. What's your secondary? The DBs, coach? I don't know what you mean. This kid understands that. And you know, and arm speed is good, compact release. It's a very repeatable delivery, Trev, very repeatable delivery. That's why you don't see, even on film, you don't see a lot of balls sail on him, you know, because keeps that wide base. He's got that natural, easy arm talent. His ability to process through reads is outstanding. He can make plays with his legs. Like, there's really not a lot this kid doesn't bring to the table. I mean, that's kind of the way I look at it. Very, very talented player.
Agreed.
I mean, right now,
Agreed,
he is a top 100 player on my board because he's really only played one full year of high school football. And there are certainly things he needs to show and develop. And I don't hand out 5 stars very often. I mean, but the tools, the 5-star upside is as clear as day for Champ. And he'll be a 5. If he just plays his whole senior year, now it's a senior year, and he just looks like kind of like this as a senior, then all of a sudden he becomes a guy for me that jumps all the way up to 5-star status. But it's just the only thing holding him back right now is just the injury. and just the lack of experience. He's a kid that's got barely 3,000 yards career yards right now. So I just need to see him healthy this year, and if he does, it'll be fine. And there actually was a question about that, Trev, that I'll just pull up now. By the way, after we're done with this, we are going to do a mailbag, and it's going to be a recruiting mailbag. So if you have some questions that are anything Notre Dame recruiting related, go ahead and throw those in there. But this is a question from Andrew Gilmore, Trev, as we kind of wrap this part of it up before we get to what's next. But he said, with Champ, do you risk a Buckner situation where due to unforeseen circumstances, he hasn't played much ball? No, it's not the same, Andrew. His situation is very different unless something else happens. And with Tyler, you had like the great sophomore year, or he had a freshman year, then his sophomore year is ended because of an injury, then he plays as a junior, and then he doesn't play as a senior. So when you looked at Tyler coming into Notre Dame, Tyler had played one season of football in 3 years. So if Champ is healthy this season, he'll go into Notre Dame having played 2 full seasons of football in 3 years. So it's a very different scenario than Tyler, because also in Tyler's senior year, there wasn't a whole lot Tyler could do football related because of all the, the stuff with the pandemic. So it's not the same. His injury also wasn't the same as Tyler's. He ended up coming back and playing in the state championship game. So even though he only played 4 games last year, one of those games was the state championship game. So there's more ball being played. And then the other thing is he's playing against a different level of competition. So he's being challenged even more than Tyler was. So that's why I don't think it's the same. The only way that becomes an issue, Andrew, and again, it's a fair question, but the only reason that becomes an issue is if we get into a situation where he misses a lot of time again this year. And as of right now, he's healthy.
Let's tie a bow on this conversation here, Brian, and talk about what's next at the quarterback position. Like we talked about in the previous segment, if Notre Dame did end up landing Champ Monds, the attention turns to the 2028 class. And I think we're in a spot now where we can comfortably have that conversation.
Yeah. So real quick too, this is where it gets hard to talk recruiting in the podcast, because we've known this was done for a week. Like, this is done for a week, and we've known this was leaning that direction since like 2 days after his visit. I mean, there's a reason Notre Dame canceled the Peter Bork visit. So we kind of got to play dumb a little bit on the show. I'm like, if they're going to get him, I almost let it slip really bad on Lucky Lefty when I was on that with them the other night. I'm like, oh, I mean, if they get him, of course. But this is also why, Trevor, you've seen them shift their focus to 2028 kids. I mean, if this wasn't obvious what was happening with the Champ Monds thing, we didn't say anything about it because it's not our place to take his moment. But like, they canceled their visit with Peter Bork and started offering 28 kids. Like, I mean, come on, guys. You know what I mean? Like, we knew this was coming, but now it's about, can you go convince a top 28 kid to now want to come play and compete against Champ and Teddy? And that's going to be the challenge for Gino Guidugli. The interesting thing is that the 28 quarterbacks have also known for a little bit that Champ was going to come to Notre Dame. You've obviously got 3 offers out so far, and we won't spend a lot of time here, Trev, because we did talk about these guys in our Thursday show. But obviously Neiman Lawrence, who we're both incredibly high on, Kingston Pre-Year, who we're both incredibly high on, and Lucas Prock, who we're incredibly high on, are right now the 3 names on the board that have offers. They've talked to Brady Quinn, who's another kid from Florida, who has visited this spring. He's a legitimate target on the board. He hasn't been offered yet. I don't know if he will. I literally don't know. Just like I didn't know when we said the other day, we weren't sure if Lucas Prock was or wasn't going to get an offer. I think like 30 minutes after our show was over, he got offered. And so they kind of offered him like a day apart. And so they've already turned to 2028 quarterbacks. And that's happened like for the last month. And that's why we saw a bunch of 28 kids on campus this spring. So I think your goal right now is to get someone that's good enough to come in and compete with Champ. I mean, that's what you did with Teddy and Noah. Now go out in 27 and get a kid that can come in and compete with them and push them and either beat them out or make sure that they play their best football. Like, if you're Teddy Girard and you're Noah Grubbs and you've got Champ Monds behind you, you better be pretty good to where if Champ Monds not your starting quarterback, you're going to be pretty flipping good at quarterback. And then now you're trying to do the same thing in 28 is if Champ Monds isn't your starting quarterback, then, it's because you got somebody special behind him. But if he is your starting quarterback, that means he's pretty flipping good because he's got that 28 kid on the bench. And honestly, that's what I think you've got in Neiman Lawrence, Kingston Preer, and Lucas Brock, Travis. 3 guys that bring the same kind of top 100 playmaking, passer first type of mindset that Mike Denbrock wants. Because, that's the key. Mike Denbrock's offense, and we've said this a million times, you could look at all the different, this guy could run and that guy could run. And Mike Denbrock has never said, don't bring me an athletic quarterback. But the number one priority has always been, I need a guy that can throw the football in a pro-style offense. And so, that's why there's some dual threat quarterbacks that can't fit in this offense. They just wouldn't fit in this offense. But if you're a athletic pro-style quarterback, great. And that's kind of what they're looking for, and Champ Monds certainly brings that to the table, as do the young men that we talked about yesterday. They're passers first who are athletic. And I don't think it's an intentional thing. I just think that's the way that the classes are in 27 and 28. I also think if it was intentional, that's smart because you're getting a different type of skill set than what you got in the 26 class. So I really like where they went with this, Trev. But now it's about, okay, can you get one of those dudes in the 28 class? Or if you keep missing on all of them because you got Champ Monds, then go find yourself a program guy that, maybe could compete for you down the road, but is more so going to be a guy that's going to be willing to see it through and wants to be at Notre Dame and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Good deal. No, good deal. Huge commitment, 2027 quarterback, Champ Monds. Glad he's Irish. That's for sure. Brian, to take us home today on the Irish Breakdown podcast, brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. We got a daily mailbag to take us home. And obviously the theme for today has been recruiting. Got a commitment from Aiden O'Neal to start off the show. Champ Monds is committed. We just wrapped up his commitment to Notre Dame. Now we're going to send everything home with a mailbag. If this does happen to be your first mailbag, you can put MB for mailbag or a mailbox emoji before your submission. That lets us know to set their question aside. And then obviously super chats get bumped up to the top.
We do have a super chat, Trevor, and that is from Charlie Weiss's last belt loop. And now these can all be anything recruiting related. It doesn't have to be about quarterbacks, but just anything Notre Dame related from a recruiting standpoint. You can ask some national stuff, but prefer to stick to Notre Dame. So we'll get started here with Charlie Weiss's last belt loops super chat.
Appreciate you, Charlie. 3 things. How would Keon's college career be if he never decommitted? Are you surprised how fast Matt Campbell has taken off compared to Franklin in recruiting? And then CP really did make the O'Neal recruitment happen. Charlie Partridge really did make the O'Neal recruitment happen pretty fast. Heater?
Well, I mean, I hope that we can kind of go on a heater here real quick, if that's what you're asking. But no, Charlie Partridge definitely is the driver behind the Aiden O'Neal recruitment. Like if Notre Dame gets Jackson Vaughn, it'll be similar to kind of like what we talked about last year with like Javian Osborne or with Jonas Walton. Like Dylan McCullough got that ship going a long way down the road, and then Jaywan Sider came in and kind of like sealed the deal. That's the reality with Jackson Vaughn. That'll be the reality with Braden Parks. When it comes to Aiden O'Neal, Abraham Cisse, same thing is true for Marcus Fakatu. If he lands any combination of Abraham Cisse, David Fuller-Runshoe, Xavier Muhammad, those guys, then that's 100% Charlie Partridge and the new staff, because they were not guys that were really on the board or were being pushed for from before. So certainly there. And then regarding Keon, his career, I don't know. I would think so, yes. I think, because I've said all along, Keon needed to be at Notre Dame because he needed to be somewhere where there was structure. Smaller environment, smaller classes, making sure he was going to class, making sure he was doing the work, make sure he was doing this. Some people that were truly invested in him as a young man, and I don't think that was the case at Alabama. And so I do think his career would have turned out differently, but that's a pure guess. Pure guess. I can't possibly know for sure, but I have a somewhat level of certainty saying that, but it is still a guess. It is still a guess. So good start, Charlie. Appreciate you.
From Jay Melvin, Brian, is Notre Dame starting to take over the Northeast recruiting pipeline? I remember you mentioning that a bunch of Penn State fans are saying on their message boards that Notre Dame is buying up players.
Oh yeah, everything single time Notre Dame destroys Penn State for a kid, it's they're just paying players. And the funny thing is I don't know about the third player. It's literally I don't know what the offers were, but I'm very confident in saying this reality. There were 3 kids that basically Penn State thought that they were going to get last year that Notre Dame got: Joey O'Brien, Kari Adams, and Grayson McHugh. And of course, the comments from the cult or the fan members of the fans of Penn State is, oh, they're just buying them. I know for a fact, like I'm 99.9% certain of this reality, that at least 2 of those 3 kids had smaller offers from Notre Dame than they got from Penn State. That's definitely true for Grayson McHugh. And so they can say that all they want, but the reality is that even if that were true, that's not an insult. Step up your game. Stop being such a poor football program. You know what I mean? Like, don't get mad at Notre Dame because their fan base and their people around them actually pay to get the players that is legally able to pay now. I don't like it. I don't like pay for play. I like NIL in its true form. But you guys always tell us, oh, we're a huge fan base. We put 100-some thousand people. Is that the only fans you have? The ones that go to the game every weekend? Because I would think a program that talks about how much storied tradition there is and all this other kind of stuff would have no problem raising NIL money to get players. So what's the problem? I don't understand what the problem is. So Notre Dame is dominating the Northeast because of it's Notre Dame, number 1. Number 2, Marcus Freeman. And number 3, because right now they've got one of the premier programs in the country, along with Georgia and Ohio State and teams like that. So that's why they're killing it. It's what we've said all along. We've said this I've said this for over a decade. If Notre Dame gives kids a reason to come, they're gonna clean up in recruiting. If they put in the work and they give kids a reason to come. And what do I mean by that? Like when Christian Wilkins was coming out of Connecticut, very high academic kid, came from a good school, good family, went to Clemson, got 2 degrees. When he went to Clemson, it was kind of like, well, they were a team that was going to the Orange Bowl and the Fiesta Bowl, the Orange Bowl and stuff like that. And they were a much better program. They were putting guys in the NFL, and just the program as a whole was just in a really good place. And then you look at Notre Dame, and it's an absolute train wreck. And you're like, why wouldn't a kid like that want to go to go to Clemson over Notre Dame? Notre Dame wasn't as good of an option there. It wasn't a place to be. Why wouldn't you go to Clemson in that situation? Of course, you're going to leave Suffield Academy, go to Clemson because you actually want to go to the NFL. And, and so Notre Dame he was part of the 2015 class. So his senior year, if you think about it, he watched the collapse of Notre Dame down the stretch of that season. The season before that. So his junior year, it was the 9-4 year. So, like, in 3 of his 4 years of high school, Notre Dame was 9-4 or worse. So that whole magical 2012 season didn't mean a whole lot. Whereas Clemson during his stretch is like, beating Ohio State in the Orange Bowl. They're playing against, they're having these 11, 12-win seasons, and it's like, and they're putting guys in the NFL. Well, now, if he was coming out differently now, there's a much better chance he ends up at Notre Dame now. Actually, probably a pretty good chance that he ends up at Notre Dame now. And that's really what this is about, Trev. Are they competing financially in NIL? Yes, they are. But that's the rules. And if you're supposedly a top-tier program, then why are you paying like you're Minnesota? That's not a Notre Dame problem. That's a Penn State problem. So I do thoroughly enjoy that.
Oh, yeah. It's cope, Jay Melvin. That's all it is.
And I'm here for it. I thoroughly enjoy it. Having lived in Pennsylvania for a couple of years, I thoroughly enjoy that. All right, let's get to some more. Trevor, going from Battle in the Trenches.
What can players do to gain more of an ability to bend around the corner? And also, what can they do to be less tight-hipped?
I mean, there's always things you can do to improve your flexibility, but, a guy that's tight-hipped is at linebacker is not going to all of a sudden look like Jeremiah Usu-Koromoa. You're just always going to kind of have that. So it's more about maximizing the tools you do have. And making it to where your game is such that it's not a weakness that hurts your game. So there's certainly things you can do. You're going to develop a different type of power moves. I'm not going to ask a guy who isn't a great bender or who doesn't have really loose hips to pass rush the same way that I would ask Arvell Reese to do it or Boubacar Traore to do it or something like that. You build his game around that aspect of it. And it's you can be an elite player and be that way. So, what can you do? Just working on flexibility and power and things like that are things that you can do to improve it, but it's never going to be something that you're like elite at.
Agreed. It's kind of like when you talk about like 40-yard dash times. You know what I mean? It's like I love Xavier Watts. He was a 4.56 guy. There was no amount of track workouts that he could have done to make him a 4.4 flat guy. There just wasn't. It's a lot like that.
So what did he do? You maximize your skills to be able to be the best version of yourself, and the best version of yourself is still really good. And also, he was a very good athlete. But to your point, Trev, there was no, if let's say Notre Dame season ended in December and Xavier Watts had that 3 months to prepare for the combine, guess what? He's still going to run in the 4.5s. The very best, maybe he cracks a 4.5 flat, maybe, and that's highly unlikely.
Mm-hmm.
But he was a heck of a football player. And that was a big thing.
From Tom Redinger, what did they take up to 7 defensive line guys if the right 7 want to come, or is the top number 6? This is a really loaded D-line class across the country, it seems like.
And that's a tough one. Tom, let's walk through this real quick, okay? Let's say that David Fuller-Runshoe commits to Notre Dame on. These are all hypotheticals. I'm not hinting that these things are going to happen. I'm just trying to answer your question. Let's say so they got one guy committed. Say David Fuller-Runshoe commits on May 15th. Let's just say that for argument's sake. Then let's say like the next week, Abraham Cisse commits. The next week, Braden Parks commits. The next week, Jackson Vaughn commits. You got 5. So then you're like, okay, we got 3 ends. We got 2 tackles. Like, okay, we got a heck of a class. But then let's say Marcus Fakatu wants to commit. You're going to take him. But would you then also take Xavier Muhammad, or would you then take like Afanye? No, you're not going to take those guys. But let's say before Braden Parks commits or before Fuller-Runshoe commits, let's say Xavier Muhammad wants to come. You take him. Then Fuller-Runshoe commits. Then Braden Parks commits, and you're sitting there with 3 D tackles and 3 D ends. And Marcus Fakatu calls up and says, I want to come to Notre Dame. That's a tough decision.
So some of it is kind of like timing then of like just who pops when. Yeah,
exactly. That gets a little tricky. They may tell him no because 7 D linemen's a lot, but Marcus is also a guy they've talked to about being like an end and a 3 technique. So maybe they view him as a swing guy at both spots. I could see that where, man, we don't have a need. We're already high. We spent a lot of money, but how do you say no to Marcus Fakatu or David Fuller-Runshoe or Abraham Cisse? That's kind of, I could see it, but it's highly unlikely. I think 5 to 6 is the target area, is the target number. So if you want to be in the class and you're inside, you better jump on board. That's the takeaway here, Trev. From that is you better jump on board pretty quick.
From Justin ND Sniper, what are some traits in regards to play style and ability that Champ brings that maybe the current quarterbacks on Notre Dame's roster don't have?
Well, I think the biggest, so he brings the best passing plus running combination. So, like, I can't say that there's nobody on the roster that can run like him because I think Blake Hebert can run like him. It's very similar running styles. I mean, you go back and watch Blake's junior and senior season, you see a lot of that quarterback power, tough to bring down, all that kind of stuff. But Blake is not nearly as advanced as a passer as Champ is. Where Champ can throw like Teddy and CJ and guys like that, but then he can run like Blake. And I think that's the unique aspect. It's not so much that he has a trait that nobody else has. And like he could throw the ball further than any of the other quarterbacks that I've seen in a game. But it's not like he's throwing 65 and Teddy's maxing out at 45. You know what I mean? Or CJ's maxing out at 45. We've seen CJ hit multiple 50-plus yard bombs at Notre Dame. It's just he's a little bit further, like he can, he's banging 20-yard dig cuts on absolute ropes. He's not the only guy that can do that. His may travel with a couple more miles per hour faster, but Blake's banging that throw. Noah's banging that throw. Teddy's banging that throw. CJ's banging that throw. So I don't think that there's any of that stuff. It's the combination of skills that is very unique to the current roster. And that's how I see it, Trev.
Yeah.
It's the blend of traits.
Yeah, 100%. He is I guess you could call him somewhat of the unicorn of the room, because one of the thoughts that I had coming out of spring practice, like, what happens if you combine like Noah Grubb's passing ability with Blake Hebert's running ability? And it's like, well, to a varying degree, that's kind of Champ Monds, so he brings that to the table. Some of the other traits are just tough because I think there's traits that Champ Monds could soon develop, like stuff that CJ has right now, but we're comparing somebody who's already started an entire regular season of college football to somebody who should be getting ready for his junior year of high school. And he's going into his senior year. So some of it, I think we'll have to wait for down the road. But as far as skill set goes, I'm with you.
Yeah. We got some super chats coming here, Trev. This is from Forklift 1976.
Appreciate the super chat, Forklift. Why has Notre Dame been able to go into Florida and take recruits from Miami?
Oh, great question. Same reason that Miami's been able to go into Chicago and take kids from Notre Dame, right? I mean, you've got a great sales pitch. You get on them early. You've got a great sales pitch. You lay out your vision. You build better relationships, and you just out recruit that other staff for them. I mean, like, I'd love to sit there and be like, screw you, Miami, and we're taking kids from your area. And like, yeah, okay. Hey, you guys know who Justin Scott is? Yeah. He's doing pretty good for us. Like, it's a back and forth. What it really comes down to is you've presented a program that kids want to play for. You've presented a vision for how you're going to develop them on and off the field. And you've got a competitive NIL package. You can't pretend like that's not part of it either. Just like that's part of the reason that Miami's getting kids from Chicago. It's not that these kids were all dead set to go to Notre Dame, and then Miami came in with this package of NIL offer like Texas Tech, and then just like, nope, I love Notre Dame, but had no interest in Miami, but I can't turn down this deal. Yeah, they're offering really good packages, but it's not just that. It's the vision. It's the aggressive recruiting. It's the building the relationships with multiple coaches that's allowing Notre Dame to go down there and have that success. And it's also a year in which there are more Notre Dame kids than other seasons. And that's not always true. There's not always that type of player down there to the volume that we see now. So there's a lot of factors that go into it. And it's not going down there because we're trying to take kids from Miami. It's just that we want Julius Jones Jr. That's the team we have to beat. Or we want, Zayden Gamble, and that's a team we have to beat. Just like Miami's not trying to get David Fulleruncho and Braden Parks to screw Notre Dame. They're like, those are two stud D tackles we want, and we just happen to have to go against Notre Dame to beat them. Right. And that's really what it boils down to. And, Trevor, I'll be honest with you, man. I've been very much I don't really care about Notre Dame and Miami rescheduling a rivalry every year, but the more you're seeing, I mean, if it's going to happen, is it now kind of the time? Because you're going toe-to-toe on the field. You're going toe-to-toe on the recruiting trail. It's kind of like the time is right for these two teams to be like, hey, let's do this. Screw the ACC. We're going to schedule you guys, and every year that it's not already on the schedule will count as it won't be an ACC game. I'm very interested in that. Maybe when Miami names their new AD, maybe that's a call that Pete Bavacqua makes. But you're starting to see that rivalry heat up a little bit, not just by what's on the field, but they're going toe-to-toe for a lot more recruits than they used to be. I think David Fulleruncho's, his top two schools right now, I think, are Notre Dame and Miami. I think that's what it's going to come down to. But they're not alone. Cam McGee just made a big visit down to Miami. Like, they're going to keep recruiting Chicago, and Notre Dame's going to keep recruiting Miami. And may the best team win. It is funny to me that Miami went up to Chicago to get their 2027 quarterback, and Notre Dame went down to near Miami to get their 27 and trying to get a 28 quarterback. That is pretty ironic. It really is.
Funny. Super chat from Let Major 198. Appreciate the super chat. Brian, can you share any stories where an opposing coach or maybe a Notre Dame coach didn't handle a kid committing somewhere else well?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I won't give you specifics because then the people will know who the coach was that told me. But I've heard so many stories of like kids calling up a school and letting them know, and the coaches will start yelling at them. Or coaches, I mean, literally like, that's bull, and all this. And I've heard stories of coaches telling kids, you're going to fail there. You're going to, I've had coaches tell kids that you're going to flunk out of Notre Dame. Literally have had coaches tell kids that. And then coaches will call Notre Dame coach and be all kind of upset about it. And, and sometimes it can hurt it. Like, man, what if he's right? This is because this is a coach that I trusted. This is a coach I really liked. And he's telling me like aggressively that I'm going to fail out. Maybe he knows something. And then Notre Dame coaches kind of got to calm him down. But there's a lot more coaches than you'd think that don't handle kids going to another school very well. At all. And it's kind of sad and pathetic, to be honest with you. The only time I've ever felt a coach was justified to be mad is when a kid just flat out lies to him. Then you have reason to kind of, maybe go off on the kid and his family a little bit. Like, hey, look, man, I don't care what you want to do. You lied to me. You told me this. We made plans. We dropped this kid because you told us you were coming to them. And the whole time you're still talking to so-and-so. And I've had Notre Dame coaches call coaches and go off on other coaches because they were like, there was one time Urban Meyer did this once, but that's not the time I'm thinking of, but they basically were telling this kid, let's set this visit up. Don't tell Notre Dame. They're trying to get the kid to lie to Notre Dame. So Notre Dame coach found out about it and let that coach know, like, hey man, this isn't okay. Here's my favorite recruiting story. It's my favorite recruiting story ever. You guys remember T. Shepard? So he was committed to Notre Dame, and USC was trying to flip him. And I was told that it was Lane Kiffin, Ed Orgeron, and another coach. They were doing their in-home visit with him. Well, back then, Notre Dame did regional recruiting, and Mike Denbrock did a lot of the California recruiting. So Mike Denbrock's going to do an in-home visit with T. Shepard. I love this story. And so he's ready to go, and T's not home. And he's trying to get a hold of T, and T's not answering. So eventually, I guess T. Shepard kind of sneaks off and calls Mike Denbrock, and he tells him, like, hey, I'm at this restaurant, and they won't let me leave. USC coaches won't let me leave. So where are you, T? So he tells him the restaurant. Mike Denbrock walks in, grabs a chair, turns it backwards, sits down, looks at the USC coach and goes, what's going on, fellas? It's the most savage move ever. I freaking love it, man. But yeah, coaches do some shady stuff on it when it comes to how they treat recruits. Ask them to lie. Miami did that, or Florida did that when Urban Meyer was there with Justin Tradow and Omar Hunter. They were like, hey, don't tell Notre Dame you're visiting. Don't tell Notre Dame you're going to flip and all this, because they didn't want Notre Dame to have a heads up to try to convince them otherwise. But like, who does that? Who tells a kid to lie? Deceive. It's pretty gross.
Yeah,
it's pretty gross. But yeah, sadly, you see that a lot more than you'd think. A lot more than you think. But I don't want to give names. I just don't think that's appropriate.
Super chat from Tom Connor. Appreciate you, Tom. Does the lack of game reps from Champ Monds bother you in his evaluation?
No. No, it doesn't. Because, again, you're evaluating a kid who's been in high school for 2 years. Most kids – here's the thing you got to think about, Tom, in this regard. If he had only played 4 games as a freshman but then 13 as a sophomore, would you have any concern? No. Most kids don't start as freshmen. So if the roles were reversed, a kid who's only been in high school for 2 years, I don't expect him to have that many years of experience under his belt. Now, again, if he goes out this year and he misses a bunch of games and things like that, then sure, I may get a little bit concerned about, his lack of experience, but he's going to have a chance to be a full 2-year starter in college or in high school, and then have played in the year he only played 4 games. One of the games he would have started is a year in which he started in the state championship game. So no, I'm not overly concerned about that, to be honest with you. As long as he gets a full year this year, I'll be fine. There's plenty of kids who've only been starters for 1 or 2 years in high school. And in today's era, these kids are doing 7-on-7s. They're doing team camps. They're doing something. Trust me, he's throwing the ball a ton. So no, I'm not. I mean, guys, I just showed you a ton of reps. I think, what did they go? 12-1 I think 12-1. Let me go look it up real quick. I think they were 12-1 in his first year of high school. And then obviously he played 4 games last season. He'll probably, knowing how Vero Beach is, he'll probably play 12 to 13 games again this year. But yeah, he's played in 17 high school football games. So no, I'm not overly concerned about that. I only get concerned about that, or excuse me, 16. I only get concerned about that if he misses another full year. Because like I said, if he started as a sophomore, and if only played 4 games as a sophomore, but then was a full-year starter as a junior, full-year starter as a senior, we wouldn't be talking about, are we worried about the reps? So I'm not. And I think also the Tyler Buckner thing is still sticking in people's heads a little bit. Yeah. I think that's a little bit of the fear. A kid being only a 2-year starter in high school is not an uncommon thing at all.
From Jersey Bear, appreciate the super chat. Wonderful day to be Irish, starting to count the days to September 6th. Love, IB.
Appreciate you very, very, very much for that. Very much for that. I think we're caught up on super chat, Strev, so let's get back to the top, and we're going to find some people we haven't had questions from here now. We got one from Ian Johnston.
Does it worry you that 2 of Notre Dame's quarterback recruits reclassified? From what I know, there's not a good track record for quarterback recruits who do that to be great elite college quarterbacks.
It's a little bit of a concern for me. Yes, I won't deny that. There's a lot of reasons for that: physical development, personal development. Such trying to think of the right word to explain it, but basically like how you react around other people, like environmental development. Just physical life maturity, physical maturity, life maturity. Those are all things that you want to experience as much as you can in that regard. So yeah, I it's a little bit of a concern, but the whole thing about a lack of track record, it's not the track record that concerns me of it. Like, it's not a good track record. We just haven't seen it a lot. So I don't know how much that's going to concern me, because it's like I worry about all those developmental things that can hinder a young man from, reaching his full potential as a person. When it comes to the other stuff, these kids play so much football year round now that they've got a lot more playing experience under their belts than they would have had 15, 20 years ago. And it's like literally just your high school season, and that's all you had. You're playing 7-on-7 year round. You're doing all these type of things. So you're getting some football development. But yeah, I mean, it's not something that I'm completely ignore. I blind like, nope, nope, la, don't want to hear it. It's going to be fine. It is a concern, but it's not one where I'm like, oh gosh, you can't take these kids. You can't do this. You can't do that because of this. We just haven't seen it a whole lot. And the other thing too is, as teams start seeing this more, they're going to learn what works and what doesn't work with helping these young men develop. I think one of the big things is you want to make sure that if you're having a kid reclassify, that you're not throwing them to the wolves right away. That was the thing that happened with JT Daniels, is like he skipped his senior year and then they just threw him right to the wolves. Starter as a true freshman. That's not what they're doing with Teddy Gerard at Notre Dame. He's going to sit for at least a year behind CJ Carr. So that's the difference for me is that. And here's what I like. If I'm going to have a kid reclassify, I'd rather them do it the way that Champ's doing it, as opposed to Teddy, JT Daniels, where they decided late in the process that they were going to reclassify. Champ is deciding before his final year of high school. So he's got a lot of time to prepare and adjust and develop and grow. And I think if you're going to make that decision, make it before your final season, not sort of that rushed, hurried decision. Have it be part of your recruiting process, as opposed to, I'm now going there and hey, let's quickly do this. That's my 2 cents. And you're seeing a lot of basketball players reclassify up and having success. Maybe that's making people think that, hey, it can work here too. I think they're 2 very different sports in that regard.
Yes.
But I think it depends on the kid. Overall, I'm not a huge fan of it. I've said that before. I'm not a big fan of reclassifying, but if you're going to do it, I think this is the way to do it. Because now Champ can say, this is my last year of high school. I'm going to enjoy my last year of high school the way that a senior does. Where Teddy, it was different for Teddy. It was different for JT Daniels. And so that's why I like this way better. But I think we're in a different era now too, where coaches have a better sense of how to deal with those young people. You're not seeing a lot of kids reclassify and be thrown into the fire the way that JT Daniels was. Who was the quarterback? Like Ryan Williams, for example, the struggles he's had out of Alabama. I don't think those are anything related to him reclassifying. I mean, I think those are related to other things, not necessarily the fact that he's reclassified.
Sure.
Because if anything, you could say he was better during the year in which he would have been a senior in high school than he was what would have been his freshman year at Alabama.
Oh, he just was. Yeah, agreed completely.
So, yeah. Let's go down to, I want to get a couple people that we haven't got stuff from yet. So here's a good one from Frank G.
Do you guys prefer early commitments or getting a commitment after officials when these young men saw more from each school?
I am neither, Frank. I think the big key for me is you've got to make sure that a kid is committing on his terms as best as possible. Meaning, like Lathan Wissington did not come into the Notre Dame visit, from what I'm told, thinking I'm going to commit this week. Nor did Notre Dame pressure him to do so. But the visit was such where he was like, I can't even think of going anywhere else. So you say, hey, go home, sleep on it. And if that's still how you feel, then let's do it. If that's what a kid wants to do, let's roll. Like Isaiah Rodgers always wanted to go to Notre Dame, wanted to enjoy the recruiting process a little bit more, but Notre Dame is where he's wanted to be. He sped up his timeline because of what Lathan Wissington did. But he picked a school that I think he always wanted to go to anyway. I'm okay with that. You've got to read the kid well. There are certain kids where if they're like, hey, I want to commit now, but are you okay with me taking visits? If a kid says that, I'm like, look, don't commit right now. If you're having that conversation, because you're going to eventually want to take your visits, like the Ellis McGaskin thing was kind of like that, where his commitment was kind of a surprise to the staff. And so they took it, but at the time there was conversations, hey, I want to still take visits, and they, no, you can't, and all that. So I'm not shocked that he ended up decommitting. I think that commitment was taken too soon. With others, it's like, hey, I've gone through the whole process. I've done all this. I don't need to wait till officials because I've visited this school, this school, this school, this school. Officials don't mean a whole lot to me. Those are just end up hanging out with the players. I'm going to go out and party. It's like officials don't, like, they're different kind of deal. If you know, you know. I mean, Champ's been everywhere. For example, I've been to Ohio State. I've been to there. I've been to there. I've been to there. I know what I'm looking for, and I found it. And I'm ready to end it. Then go for it. Where I get nervous, Frank, is when a kid makes a surprise commitment during the visit that you take. And you talk a kid out of taking official visits. Like, that's when I'm like, no, don't do that. Let the kid visit, because I'd rather never have him than to lose him after he committed. So it's just depends on the kid. I would always rather get recruiting done earlier, as long as it's organic and not forced. Like, they didn't force Rodney Dunham to commit early. He was just ready. Take it. You take that flipping commitment. You take Ebenezer's commitment if he's genuinely ready. And that's the difference. It's just, you got to read the kid properly to make sure if that one's going to stick or not.
Yeah, 100%. It's subjective. Mm-hmm. If they're ready and they've gone through their process, then I would absolutely take their commitment. I'm with you. From Time Cone, has Chad at USC had a lot of steals from Notre Dame since he knows a lot of our selling points, or is he a non-issue these days?
Well, he's not a non-issue. I don't think you can say that. I mean, Notre Dame, like the Samote Kotaanga kid from last year that Chad was recruiting at Notre Dame, and then when he went to USC, that kid was not really looking at Notre Dame anymore. And I'm a little concerned about where things stand with Gavin Williams. They're basically trying to pay him a ton of money to get him to go to USC instead of coming to Notre Dame. So they've had their wins since he's been there. There's no doubt about that. Notre Dame has had their wins as well. But yeah, I mean, it's fair to say that they've had some kids they've taken from Notre Dame. It's not a lot because they're not necessarily going after the same type of kid in a lot of instances. But like Marcus Fakatu, he's not looking at USC. So, there's some of those kids that USC's not really a high-level school for them. But you can't say that it's been a non-factor. It just hasn't been like a huge factor.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things within that as well is like Notre Dame doesn't keep their recruiting selling points a secret. Marcus Freeman is very boisterous about, hey,
Yeah,
like we're
everybody
four
knows their
for
stuff.
40. Like it's not like Chad Bowden has like this inside track of like this secret pamphlet that Notre Dame hands out to like recruits. It's like, hey, not a lot of people know about this, but you guys should check this out about Notre Dame. So I definitely get the point that you're saying as far as like how the operation goes, but Notre Dame is very open and vocal about what makes them a recruiting power. That's the biggest thing.
Agree. All right, got a super chat popped up from Tyler Evans.
Appreciate it, Tyler. Would you guys ever reclassify if you had the opportunity?
I wouldn't. I wasn't physically ready to reclassify. I grew about an inch and gained about 15 pounds my senior year of high school. Filled out decent amount. I wouldn't have been physically ready to reclassify. And I wasn't that type of recruit either. So like I got some interest as a junior in from some, I got some handwritten letters from like NC State, Florida State, Tennessee, teams like that. But like, that's when they were doing like, okay, now we're going to kind of go after everybody that might be on our radar. And, it never really went past some of that initial interest. Hey, come to camp, stuff like that. And I think I've shared the story about, NC State. I met the coach. I was down in Florida at the time, and I met the coach from NC State. Had seen my film, liked my film, and when he came into the office, I was sitting down. And I started to get up, and he's like, "No, don't get up." And shook my hand and talked to him, and then got some handwritten letters from them, and they invited me to camp. And I went to camp. They met me, and that's the first time they'd see me standing up. And I was 6 feet tall, $175, $180. And so I was like, I think second or third on the jugs machine for fastest throwers. I was throwing far. I was super accurate. I literally broke a receiver's finger. I felt bad about it. I broke a kid's finger on a hitch route. I just freaking gassed him up and just went right through his finger, snapped his finger, and went into the trees at NC State's practice field or, practice facilities. And I ran a 4.5 something in the 40 at the camp, and I was killing it. And they were not paying any attention to me. And I went up to this one coach and I said, "Man, like, why are they not looking at me right now?" And he's like, because this guy was praising me all week. He was a coach at a smaller school. And he looks at this kid from Pennsylvania, and this kid was terrible, Trev. I mean, he was 6'5", 220, and just sizing for nothing. He had a pretty strong arm, but he goes, "I can teach that kid to throw football. I can't teach you to be 6'5". So, okay. And, because at the time, that wasn't really something that people look for. And so, I didn't have that. You don't have 1AA schools convincing kids to reclassify. You don't have D2 schools, convincing kids to reclassify. So it wouldn't have been on my radar, but I don't think I would have been physically able to do that. Now, if I was a 6'2", 225-pound sophomore like Champ Monds, and I probably would have thought about it. I didn't like high school. I was not one of those people. I was like, I always knew like I was liked because I was the quarterback, not because people liked me. We were poor for much of my high school career, and you had to deal with that stuff. I did not like high school, like at all. So I wouldn't have been opposed to it. Like all the kids wanted to go out and drink and do this, and that just wasn't me. I was never like a thing I enjoyed. So if I was Champ Monds, I probably would have looked at reclassifying and getting to college sooner. Yes. But when I was 16, 17, it just wasn't even on my radar, nor would I have been physically ready to do that.
Yeah, the schools that were looking at me were not asking me to reclassify. I don't think Trine University in Angola or Indiana State down in Terre Haute needed me that bad to reclassify. Like,
right.
Like I'm very aware. Like I've always said this about my playing career. My mental understanding of the game far surpassed my physical capabilities. I was never bad. Like physically, I was never.
I've seen
bad.
your film. You weren't bad.
Yeah, you weren't bad. But it was never like. Believe me, if we watched my high school highlight film after Champ Monds, people would be like, "Yeah, man, why did you play football?" Like, you know what I mean? It's one of those things. So it's like. I could have been fine. I had a partial scholarship offer from Indiana State, and I had since it was D3, like an academic scholarship from Trine because they were D3. But they're not asking me to reclassify. Yeah. Like there was just no point.
I would have recruited you to Defiance.
Aw.
Like I saw your high school film. I would have, I would have recruited you there. Yeah. Because we didn't need I wouldn't have recruited you to that specific team, but because we were a triple option team, but When I was coaching D3, I would have had you on my board for sure. Yeah. And the nice thing about recruiting D3 is you're bringing in like 5-6 freshman quarterbacks a year.
Right.
So, yeah, I'd have recruited you. You're like you said, your mobility would have been a hindrance, but you were smart. You could throw the ball, and you had some decent size to you. So I would have recruited you. I'm not just saying that because I've hired you. So I figure the way I suck up to you is signing your paycheck every month. Not telling you were a good high school quarterback. So
mobility hindrance is a very nice way to say that. I appreciate that.
When you recruit kids at the D3 level, you find real nice ways to tell them that they're not good at something. It's
believe me,
a different deal.
I understand. Quick side story. I went to this camp where I started getting looked at by Indiana State. I went to a camp and quickly realized that like the second you walk in the door, you start to get evaluated at these things. And I just didn't, like, my parents didn't understand recruiting. My parents were very like, if you're good enough, they'll find you. And it's like, yeah, that's just completely incorrect. Unless you're like the best player in the state type of deal. And even then, but I learned very quickly that you start to get evaluated the second you walk in the door. Because I went to this camp and we woke up early in the morning and drove down from Elkhart down to Terre Haute, which is about like a 3.5-4 hour drive. And I walked in the door and I immediately just started crushing these bagels that they had on it, like this breakfast spread, like before this camp. And so the offensive coordinator walked up and I had like strawberry cream cheese, like just all over this bagel. And I was sitting down chomping on it. And he's like, "Are you the kid from Elkhart?" And I was like, "Yeah." And he was like, "What's your name?" And I was like, "Trevor Trowbridge." And he's like, "Cool. I'm going to call you Bagel." So then for the rest of the camp, he just called me Bagel. And then like that day, we all clapped like 40 times and I ran like a 4.91. And he was like, "It's all those bagels, dude." And I was just like, that, just could never live that down. Never.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
From Ball Paint Shillelagh.
Coaches are not creative beings. We are not.
No, that's okay. That's okay. From Ball Paint Shillelagh.
Real original coach.
Yes. Good one. Yeah. From Ball Paint Shillelagh. So if Champ Monds had to run the triple option, kidding. But for real,
dead to me, Ball Peen.
It's hard to project. But what is the number one skill or factor that would make Champ better than he already is?
What is the number one skill factor that would make him better than he already is? It's just going to really come down to mastering the system that he plays in. That's really it. Like physically, he's a college athlete right now. Physically, is he from a maturity standpoint? Is he from a, he reads defenses real well for a high school kid. That's a lot different than reading defenses when you're in the college football semifinals against Ohio State. And you're trying to pick apart a Matt Patricia defense, or you're trying to pick apart a Brent Venables defense, or you're trying to pick apart in practice a Chris Ash defense or whoever. But it's just those things. It's just command, grasp of the system that you're going to run. And then because if you don't mentally grasp it, then your physical abilities takes a back seat because now you're thinking, you're not confident, you're rushing your mechanics. There's just a lot of different things that you won't be as good at in that regard. And I just want to let you know, Trevor, you just got squirreled. Because Ryan Roberts told a story one time where he said, talking about his nickname was Squirrel, and they just would call him Squirrel all the time. And I have a bad feeling that people like IE, Irish English, and Tommy Guns are just going to now just the bagel thing is not going to
Yeah. My nickname of VP of IB is quickly going away, and it's being replaced with Bagel.
It's not nearly as impressive. Vince Trowbridge is gone, and it's now Bagel Trowbridge. It's not good.
Super chat from Black Irish, our guy Christopher Galloway. Appreciate you, man. Great show, guys, and a great day to be Irish.
It's always a great day to be Irish, and I get a double up on it because I'm a fan of Notre Dame and my heritage is Irish. But yes, it's a great day to be a Notre Dame fan. Get a big time D end and a big time quarterback. That's always a good day. That's always a good day. I think we got everybody for first timers. So, Trev, we can go back up to the top. And we got one from Jay Melvin.
Who do you prefer on the recruiting trail for D-line and edge? Fakatu, Fuller-Runchu, or Parks, and for edge, Cisse or Jackson Vaughn?
Well, the thing about Cisse and Jackson Vaughn is it's not an either or. I mean, that's the reality. It's not one or. You take both of them. And so I don't need to make that decision. Abraham Cisse is ahead of Jackson Vaughn right now because he's a year older and Jackson just reclassified. So it's a different animal than either or. It doesn't matter. I want both of them, and Notre Dame will take both of them if they both want to come. That's the reality of it. So it doesn't have to be an either or. The second piece of this conversation is, as far as D tackle, Notre Dame would take all three of those at D tackle. The one guy that I've said you have to get to me is Braden Parks, because he's the one true, pure inside guy of that group. He's the 6'3", 300-pounder that you can put over the nose and play three technique. Whereas Folarunshu and Fakatu are more, they're similar. They can play three technique, and they can play some edge and some different looks. They bring a different skill set to the table than Braden Parks. Not better, not worse, different. And so I think your greatest need is you need another beef eater. You know what I mean? And there's someone in our chat that who's that name. Like, you need that space eater that's also a playmaker to start stacking that up. So like Braden Parks, and then get one of Fakatu or Folarunshu, I'm good. I think Fakatu is the better player today as of May 1st. I think David Folarunshu might have a greater upside than him. So you take any of them. But it's a situation where if I'm Notre Dame and I get Folarunshu and Parks and Fakatu wants to come, okay. Or if I get Parks and Fakatu and Folarunshu wants to come, okay. But Braden Parks is such a must get for so many reasons. And you've invested so much time into him. You need to get that win. But honestly, if all five of the kids you just talked about wanted to come, I believe that Notre Dame would take all five of them. So I don't think it has to be an or situation. But to meet your needs, you need Parks and one of the other two. But I think you need both Cisse and Jackson Vaughn.
Agreed.
In the 26 or 27 class of defensive end. I don't think it's an either or. I think you genuinely need both of those guys. I really do. All right, got another one from Jay Melvin.
Brian, you mentioned last week on Irish Breakdown that 247 has an anti-Notre Dame bias. Why is that? What does the evaluator have against Notre Dame, and how do we hurt him?
Well, it's not. I mean, I've talked about it before. I don't want to get into it too much again, but I just think that his time covering Notre Dame soured him on Notre Dame fans, and I think he's got some biases towards Notre Dame players. He's got some biases toward Northern players, which a lot of Notre Dame guys have or are from. And so I think it's just a lot of it's just an emotional reaction to, a certain thing. But, that's we can have that conversation further, but that's more of a, that's more of a message board one. So,
sure.
Yeah,
From Jay Melvin, Brian, I've heard you and your friend Brian Smith mention that USC is overpaying for guys to not go to Notre Dame. Why is Chad doing this? Did Notre Dame and Coach Marcus Freeman anger him or something?
That's good strategy. I mean, if you're USC, Alabama used to do this all the time under Nick Saban. Like, why'd they take that? They don't even need that kid. Well, he was going to go to Georgia, or he was going to go to Tennessee, or he was going to go to Florida. That's smart recruiting.
Yeah.
So you say, well, they don't really need Gavin Williams. Well, yeah. I mean, you don't turn down good players, but if I'm going to keep them from going to another team that we're going to compete against for a championship, hopefully somewhere down the road, then why not do that? I don't think it's just screw Notre Dame. I think that's an added bonus. I get to take the knife and stick it a little bit into Notre Dame's back. Sure. But even if he didn't have a beef with Notre Dame or Marcus Freeman, that's smart recruiting. I mean, coaches do that all the time. We don't need that third defensive end, but I'd rather him come be the third end in our class than the number one over at that other school that's our rival. That's a common theme. So I don't. I mean, I think I'd be lying if I said there wasn't I want to take a kid that Marcus Freeman wants away from him, certainly. But even if they were best friends still and loved each other and talked every day, I think he'd still want to take guys away from Notre Dame because they're a team that's standing in our way to achieving our ultimate goals. So if we can do something to hurt their depth chart, then let's do it. Coach has been doing that forever. Mount Union at our level used to do that all the time. They'd sign 9 running backs. And I'm like, dude, why are you going to Mount? They got 6 other running backs committed. But Mount Union was only recruiting that kid to make sure he didn't come play for us or John Carroll or something like that. Every level, you have coaches that do that. And it's smart recruiting.
Another one from J. Melvin. BD, when you used to talk about recruits Brian Kelly would consistently miss out on, it was players like this that Brian Kelly just refused to put effort into getting. It must feel pretty good seeing Notre Dame get them now.
Yeah, I'm not sure which player you're talking to. I think Brian Kelly would have probably landed Aiden O'Neal. I think his staff, but the difference is Aiden O'Neal would have been like the number 1 guy and like by far better than anybody else they got. I don't think he would have got Champ Monds. I don't think there's any chance in heck that they would have gone down to Miami and gotten Champ Monds.
No,
they wouldn't have they wouldn't have fought enough to get him. But I mean, a Catholic school kid, like that's one I got to say. I mean, it's not like Brian Kelly never signed a top 100 defensive end, but when he did, a lot of times it was a kid from New York or something like that. So yeah, it's a different animal.
Yep.
But that's one that I wouldn't say, oh, they wouldn't have got him. I think they would have gotten him.
From Battle in the Trenches, you mentioned that linebacker recruiting was a mess. Was this because prior coaches weren't putting in as much effort into recruiting, or was it more just problems with talent evaluation, or what was it?
I think it was about the staff turnover, and there's a little bit more to it. I've said this before. We can talk about that on the premium message board, but I think, look, you got to think about it. 2027 linebacker recruits have lived in a world where Notre Dame's had 3 different linebacker coaches in the last 5 months, 4 months. That's going to hurt your recruiting. That's going to hurt your board. That's going to hurt, because we saw Al Washington go out to California and get in on some kids and offer some kids. And then a week and a half later, he's gone. And that momentum died. So there's just a lot of factors. But yeah, that's you've had three linebacker coaches in 4 months. That'll mess with recruiting a little bit.
From Justin ND Sniper, Gino has taken an interesting approach to quarterback recruiting by limiting the offers they give out. Do you like this strategy thus far?
Well, it's worked. I mean, I said at the very beginning, this is a risky strategy, very risky strategy. But if it works, great. And so far, it's worked. I mean, he's able to use when I offered you as a selling point of you're my guy. Or, you're one of 3 guys. We love all 3 of you. We'll take all 3 of you. But it's worked. And they knew going in, like, hey, there's risk involved. It wasn't like he went in blindly, like, well, what could possibly go wrong? I mean, it wasn't like that. They knew it was and that's why they intended to do it that way. So I don't know that I would do that. But I'm also not at Notre Dame and selling it the way. So it's worked so far. You have to give them credit. It's definitely worked. I mean, they were able to kind of have a small board in the 26 class, and Brady and Noah, hey, whichever one of you wants to come first. You sped up the process of them deciding by that. Brady was going to commit. He decided not to. Then Noah jumped on board, and okay, let's roll. Noah Grubbs, let's roll. So yeah, I don't have a problem with it. I don't have a problem with it because it's worked.
Yep.
That's really what it boils down to. It's worked.
Another one from Justin ND Sniper. If you were to project as of now, where do you think this class will end up amongst the other top recruiting classes when it's all said and done? Top 5, top 10?
Oh, I mean, top 10 for sure. Yeah. Most likely top 5. I did a, 247 as that class calculator where you can like project kids into the class and it'll tell you how many points they would have in the final system. And I did a projection of who they get, but I tried to be like, okay, here's a regular one and of like where I'm pretty sure they're going to get these guys. And then here's where they pull off just a couple upsets. So I put like Albert Simeon and Caden Henderson in there. So like a couple upsets, but nothing crazy. Like I didn't give them 6 DBs and 4 linebackers, and I didn't give them Falkatu, Follow Run Shoot, and Braden Parks. You know what I mean? Like I didn't do that.
Sure.
And so I didn't give them like Simeon, Von Brandt, and Cam Wagner. So I tried to like, okay, I'll give them one of the top highly ranked guys, and then not. And in one of them, like the one that's like, yeah, that'd be a good finish, but not a great finish. It was like a top 6 class. And the one that I did like the great finish, I think it would have ranked actually, let me pull it up. I have it. It would have ranked either number 1 It would have ranked number 1 the last 2 years and would have ranked number 2 in 2024. It would have ranked number 3 in 2023 and would have ranked number 4 in 2022. So it would have been a top 4 class every year. 2 number 1s, a number 2, a number 2, a number 3, and a number 4 is where it would have ranked the last 5 years. And it's a class that I could see happening. It's going to take a couple upsets, like I said, a Caden Henderson and an Albert Simeon kind of thing. But if they're able to pull off just 2 upsets, then it's a top 2 to 3 class, if not number 1. And part of that is like, well, like what if Texas A&M puts together a class that's like kind of like the one they had in 2022? Then I don't care what you do, you're not going to catch that. But it's going to be a top 3 class if they can close the way I hope. But at the very least, it's going to be 5 to 6 based on you're going to have to lose some kids that I think you're pretty much got right now in order to not finish with a top 5 class. So, yeah, that would be a big surprise.
From Jay Melvin, Josh Pate said this on his show: Notre Dame is running their program the way Dabo Swinney wishes he could run his program. What does he mean by that?
I mean, Jay Melvin, he's basically saying what we've said on our show, that this should be the model that Dabo Swinney uses. And it's, first of all, it's about style of play. You're a physical team. You can score, you play great defense, things like that. But it's more so about how you build your roster. Marcus Freeman is showing, and he's not the only one, but he's showing you, look, you can dominate high school recruiting. You can find kids that are elite players that you got to give some money for, but also fit into your program's culture and dominate on the high school trail. And then use most of the money Notre Dame has goes into high school recruiting and keeping the current roster. They're not throwing $5 million at a quarterback. Now, Riley Leonard did well at Notre Dame. And there's been some jokes about how, Riley Leonard talked about how he made more money at Notre Dame than he did in the NFL so far. And I'm like, well, yeah, because he was a 6th-round draft pick who made less than $1 million last year. I would imagine Notre Dame might have a couple kids on their roster that are making more than Riley Leonard did at quarterback last year. But like, if you're a high draft pick, it's not anywhere close. If you're a 3rd or 4th-round draft pick, it's not anywhere close. They're not paying that kind of money for transfer kids. Now they're given good money. Trust me, Tion Gray did not come for free. Francis Brew did not come for free. But it's like we said, it's pick your spots for filling out the portal. Hey, we need receiver help. Let's go do it. We need D tackle help. Let's go do it. We'd like a veteran corner. Let's go do it. And then there you go. What else did you get? A kicker? Where Notre Dame's not rebuilding their offensive line through the portal. They're not rebuilding their entire front 7 through the portal. That's through high school recruiting and development, and then fill the needs where you have them through the portal. Notre Dame had an 8-man recruiting class, portal class last year. That's where Dabo should be. But it's filling holes, but you're recruiting the elite players. Be willing to spend the money on high school players that fit your culture. And that's something that Marcus Freeman has so far masterfully done. And that's what I believe he means by that. Is build your program that way. And somebody's talking about how many guys had drafted last year. Again, guys, you have got to understand we're talking about a very different world that's only about 2 years old. So all the guys that Dabo had drafted last year are pre the era that we're dealing with right now. So he can't recruit this way the way he did those classes. That's the reality of it. He right now would not get TJ Parker and Peter Woods in the same class right now, the way that he's running things. So, yeah, that's why their recruiting hasn't been as good, because Dabo he's fine paying players on his roster, but he doesn't want to get into these bidding wars for high school kids. He's starting to get there. So I think he understands I've got to make some changes. But as we've said on our show before, Trev, it's Notre Dame needs to be the model for how people like Dabo want to build their team. Go get the best high school kids you can, pay for them, and then make sure their culture fits. Every kid who gets paid isn't a bad culture fit. The kid that wants to, hey, I want to play for you, but only if you match this other school. That's not a kid that I necessarily want. I don't want many kids like that. Notre Dame, that's what Notre Dame's doing. And then find the right fits in the portal. And right fits are needs, position of need, and kids that fit into your program. And I think for the most part, Notre Dame has done that in the portal. I think there's a couple kids that I'm like, yeah, I'm going to see how that one pans out because I'm not sure that kid's a fit at Notre Dame. We'll see how that plays out. But that's what I think Josh means by that. It's just Marcus Freeman's laying the blueprint for people that don't want to run a program the way Lane Kiffin is, the way that Joey McGuire is, the way that, some other schools are. It's not better, not worse. I just don't want to do it that way. Kirby's building his roster a similar way. Ohio State builds their roster a similar way to Notre Dame. So there's a blueprint out there for you, but you can't do the whole, well, I'm not paying high school kids either. Okay, then you're just not going to win. Like, sorry, you're just not going to recruit well enough to win if you're going to be that stubborn about it. Like, because here's the deal. Once you get a high school kid and you pay him to come, he's one of your guys and you're willing to spend money on your guys. You just got to make sure the kid's a right culture fit. If you do that, then I think Dabo will be fine. Yeah. And I think he's starting to figure that out, Trev. That's why they're getting some good wins in the recruiting trail. I mean, Naeem Burrows didn't go to Clemson out of the goodnesses of his own heart and just because he loved it. You know what I mean? Like, they had to pay him, and that's okay. That's fine. So we had one more question pop up, Trev, that we'll finish with this one from Terrence Westbrook.
Which wide receivers do you see coming in the 2027 class?
So first of all, Terrence, we haven't chatted in a while, but I hope you're doing well. I know you and your family have dealt with some times, man, but we've been praying for you. We hope you're doing well, man. But right now, I don't really want to say who I think I see them coming. I'll kind of circle back to what we talked about before. It'll be 2 to 3 players from this group of guys, right? It's going to be Julius Jones Jr. Obviously, he's a guy that Notre Dame staff wants bad. It'll be him plus one of Jackson Coleman, Cade Cooper, Quentin Burrell, Osani Gales, Matthew Gregory, or Trenton Yancey. It'll be 1 to 2 of like, they want Julius no matter what. They want him, and then, hopefully get 1 to 2 of those other guys. But it'll be 2 to 3 of that group. And so I think they've narrowed their board down a little bit, but not enough to where it's like you can zero in on a couple guys because you don't have anybody publicly committed yet. So that's where I'm at on that one. But, I mean, the one must get, no questions asked, you have to get him if this is going to be a successful receiver class, is Julius Jones Jr. Have to get Julius. That's the big key.
100%.
Huge key for the receiver class. You get him, and after that, it's like you get any of those other 1 or 2 guys, and I'm going. Now, I have some guys that I like more. I'm a huge Cade Cooper fan. If you guys haven't seen Jackson Coleman's film, watch it. That, I don't know. Oregon thought they were about to steal one, Trev. They really did, because they gave this kid. I was told the number that he got offered by Oregon, and that's not the offer you get of a 3-star kid from Colorado. That's not the offer you give that, and so it's like, okay, this. College coaches think a whole lot different about this kid than the recruiting services do. How do you know, Brian? 2 of the best teams in the country with the 2 of the best rosters in the country are battling it out for this kid, and they're both throwing bank at him. So, yeah, they view him differently than what the recruiting services do. So, yeah, he's a talented player. But you've got to get Julius. That's the guy. After that, you get me a couple of those other kids, I'm happy. Even though I have my pecking order, there's still a lot of really good receivers in that group, but you've got to get Julius. Got to get Julius. Got to get Julius. That's a big key for them. Get him, and I'm feeling really good about where things go. I'll be damned for sure.
Absolutely. Folks, that's going to do it for us here today on the Irish Breakdown Podcast, brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. I think the guys are going live tonight on IB Nation Sports Beat. They don't have a show set, but obviously that's not going to be for a couple hours.
I think We In, We Out is tonight.
Okay.
And now I will be going on live with them at 5 as well, just to wrap up recruiting. So if you guys want to come on tonight, Sean's going to have me on right at that 5:05 mark to talk a little bit about recruiting. And then I think they're going to dive into We In, We Out. And then also, just so you guys know, I believe starting next week, I'm going to start having a regular segment on Wednesday where I'm going to give some recruiting updates on the evening show. So if you're not listening to the guys at 5 o'clock, the IB Nation Sports Beat. You're going to want to start doing that because I'm going to start making a regular appearance on Wednesdays. And then I think Trevor next couple weeks, you're going to have some days where you're going to be on with Sean as well. So definitely want to check that out.
Most definitely. Well, folks, have a fun and safe weekend. This was a heck of a way to end the week. Aiden O'Neal commits, Champ Monds commits. We give a overarching update on Notre Dame recruiting and where it's staying. So be sure to tune in tonight. Here's some more of that action at 5:05. Well played. Well played. I'll be sure to check out the message boards. It's on my to-do list, that's for sure, Irish English. Now, on your way out of this show, appreciate the super chat, daily comments. We hope you have a great weekend too. Now, on your way out of this show, be sure to hit that like, hit that subscribe, hit that notification bell. Be sure to share this podcast with your friends, family, anybody that you know loves Notre Dame and college football as much as you do. But as always, and yes, I will be sure to do this Irish English, check out the premium message boards at boards.irishbreakdown.com. It's the best way to stay in tune with everything Notre Dame football and the best way to support what we do here. Have a fun and safe weekend. Until next time, that's Brian. I'm Trevor. See you back here very soon on the Irish Breakdown Podcast.